During the early 1920s, the world was mesmerized by King Tut. A British archaeologist, Howard Carter, discovered the young pharaoh's tomb in Egypt's Valley of the Kings, 1922. But the public wasn't only interested in gold and jewelry. The press wrote about the curse of the pharaohs, but was it true? Was an ancient curse really the reason everyone entering the pyramids lost their lives? At the time, this was the only explanation for a series of unexplained passings. The man present at the opening of King Tut's burial chamber, George Herbert V, Earl of Carnarvon, lived only 5 more months after the discovery. He had also sponsored the dig. In comes Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. You probably know of him, the English writer behind Sherlock Holmes. He claimed that an evil elemental caused the explorer's demise. He must have been joking, right? Unfortunately, no. The newspapers continued to blame the pharaoh's curse after every Egyptologist left this world. These are the scientists who study the ancient cultures of Egypt. The archaeologist who opened King Tutankhamun's tomb passed away full 17 years after the discovery. The reason for it wasn't a secret: Hodgkin's disease. Yet again, journalists around the world wrote of a curse. This was getting ridiculous. But science must have had a rational explanation, right? Well, it did. And that explanation was common mold. Harmful fungi, Aspergillus, can survive for ages in sealed tombs. When humans inhale them, there's a high risk of infection in people who have a weakened immune system. Today, doctors believe this is what happened to the unfortunate explorer more than a century ago. Scientists now know that this type of fungi grows especially well on grain. And King Tut's tomb was full of offerings in the form of baskets full of raw grain and bread. Researchers discovered other varieties of fungi on ancient Egyptian mummies. These molds can easily cause some nasty consequences for humans. The danger of rotting organic material is real. Just look inside your fridge. Any food leftovers you have there start to go off after just 3 to 4 days. You can imagine what happens to food in a sealed chamber after thousands of years. Food is just one kind of organic material. There is also wood. If you expose it to water or even moisture in the air, it starts to deteriorate. You don't have to travel to Egypt to see the effects of this process. Any abandoned building in your neighborhood can serve as an example. When a piece of wood gets wet and has no way of drying out, there is going to be damage. From fungi to wood-boring insects, the list is long. Rotten wood presents a huge structural issue. Beams and floor panels are all made of timber, so you better not go inside a failing building. You can easily lose your footing. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. The building materials since the time of the pharaohs have changed, but so have the dangers. One of the best examples is asbestos. Until the 1970s, most home insulation materials contained this substance. It was in everything, from boilers to soundproofing. This microfiber provided excellent heat insulation. But then, the United States banned asbestos in 1989. The UK did the same a decade later. The reason for it is that asbestos becomes a health hazard when it gets damaged. When humans inhale asbestos fibers, they can get seriously sick. Abandoned strictures are full of this material, and there is no one to maintain them. You see the danger now. Another material is also common in old buildings: lead. Ancient Romans used lead piping to channel spring water into their homes. They also cooked in lead vessels, which was probably not the wisest of choices. You see, lead and water don't go well together because of something called corrosion. But this problem isn't ancient. US officials banned lead piping only in 1986. That means that 7% of American households still have lead service lines. And this is not the only source of poisoning. Until the mid-1960s, builders used lead paint to coat woodwork. In abandoned buildings, this lead coating snapped a long time ago. Anyone who touches doors and windows will disturb this lead dust and inhale it. The dust particles are at least visible to an unaided eye. This is not the case for carbon monoxide. This gas has no color, so you can't see it. It has no odor, so you can't smell it. No way to detect a carbon monoxide leak at all. And how does this dangerous gas usually escape? Poor maintenance. Well, abandoned buildings have zero maintenance. 1 second, you could be exploring an old factory, and the next you could feel dizzy with and have a terrible headache. These are just some of the symptoms of CO poisoning, the less severe ones. But what is the source? All it takes is for an old boiler to finally give way after years of neglect. We've reached an important question. What is the main factor in air quality inside a room? If you are thinking the level of oxygen, try again. It turns out that oxygen levels drop by only 0.3% in 8 hours inside an airtight room. This is a room in which doors and windows are sealed with tape, so the decrease is even smaller in normal conditions. Oxygen isn't the main problem. The levels of carbon dioxide rise sharply inside a sealed room. This is the direct result of human breathing. We inhale oxygen and exhale CO2. Think of it as a waste gas. Normally it's only a tiny portion of the air we breathe, 0.04%. But in a sealed room, high levels of carbon dioxide will make you feel drowsy. And that's the last thing you need when inside a dilapidated building. Carbon dioxide will decrease your ability to think clearly. Researchers from Harvard did an interesting study in 2016. They had office workers come in 6 days in a row to complete a problem-solving test. During the week, they gradually raised the carbon dioxide levels in the mock-up office. The results of the same test kept getting worse over time. There are many factors at play, but CO2 levels definitely had an impact on the workers' problem-solving ability. The test took place inside a typical office environment, not inside a crumbling building where visitors must watch their every step. When I say visitors, I really mean trespassers, and trespassing is a criminal offense in the United States. This goes both for private and public property. If you defy the law, you can be fined up to $5,000 or even face lockup time. That should make you think twice before jumping over a fence with a no trespassing sign. But again, you might not be the only one inside. You can never know who else is in the building. Perhaps a person up to no good? It doesn't have to be a person at all. Animals can pose a threat as well. You would be startled if you saw a rat, for example. But the poor animal would be scared as well. It might bite you. The list of diseases rats carry is pretty long. But rodents' teeth can cause other forms of damage. They grow constantly, so the animal has to constantly nibble on something to stop them from overgrowing. If you ever felt peckish at 1 a.m., you know the feeling. Electric cables are high on the rodents' menu. Abandoned buildings have plenty of those. Old wiring is dangerous on its own. Structures erected before 1984 often used wires made out of aluminum. Today, copper is the standard because an aluminum wire is 55 times more likely to catch on fire than a copper one. Flipping a switch in a rundown building can cost you your life. Be on alert for telltale signs that something is wrong. Lights that flicker, sparks from sockets, and the smell of smoke. And yeah, don't count on an earth cable to protect you from electrocution. Ground cables became standard only in the 1960s.
Your tummy acid can chow down on a razor blade like it's no big deal. Some penguins can totally out-height us humans. And you could potentially turn a jar of peanut butter into a rock and diamond ring to pop the question to your boo. Sounds crazy? Well, it's all true. If you're itching for more facts like these and want to learn why salty crackers are more of a tooth hazard than sugary treats, then stay tuned. Mattresses get heavier over time. As we sleep, our mattresses soak up all our skin oils, sweat, and tears. Yes, I also cry at night. This creates the perfect environment for dust mites, fungi, and bacteria to thrive. Over 5 years, your mattress might collect up to 880 pints of body fluids. Dead skin is another big weight-adding factor too. With 1.5 million skin cells shed hourly, these flakes pile up and become a feast for dust mites. An average used mattress could be home to up to 10 million of these critters. Your spilled coffee makes your mattress heavier too. Foam layers in a mattress trap the liquid and add to its weight. If you know Miss Piggy from the Muppets or Yoda from Star Wars, you'll instantly recognize their unique voices. It's hard to believe they have anything in common, right? Well, Frank Oz spilled the beans in 2021 in his interview. Starting with The Muppet Show and Sesame Street, Frank gave life to characters like Miss Piggy, Cookie Monster, Grover, and more. Then he ventured into the galaxy far, far away to voice Yoda and even came up with the alien's iconic way of speaking. Let's say you decided to move to the healthy side and started munching on carrot sticks instead of your regular, not exactly healthy snacks. Suddenly, you catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror and realize that your skin has a subtle orange tint. Say what now? Nope, you're not dreaming. All that beta-carotene in orange fruits and veggies can give your skin a temporary glow-up. Don't worry though, just switch up your snacks and the Oompa Loompa look will fade in no time. Some people believe there's no such thing as too much garlic, and they're right. For a fun science experiment, try tasting garlic through your feet. The American Chemical Society claims it's totally possible. Cut a piece of garlic, place it in a bag, put your bare feet inside, and wait. Thanks to a compound called allicin, the garlic will travel through your skin to your mouth and nose. Kids of identical twins share a special bond, being considered both cousins and half-siblings. This unique relationship is due to their genetic similarities. They inherit similar DNA from their identical twin parents. While legally they are cousins, genetically they're more like half-siblings. In fact, they share about 25% of their DNA, double the amount shared by regular cousins. This makes them more genetically related than typical cousins, but not as close as full siblings or identical twins. A man in the US has been surviving on nothing but 20 potatoes a day for 2 months. Chris Voigt from Washington State Potato Commission wanted to show that potatoes aren't just a bunch of carbs, but are actually good for you. You may think that eating spuds alone may make you gain a few extra pounds, but Chris shed some pounds and lowered his cholesterol instead. By the way, in theory, you could even survive eating taters and butter only. Not only are potatoes cool on Earth, but scientists have also made them cool in space. They're the first plants ever grown beyond Earth. In the early 90s, there was an experiment about growing potatoes in space. The study aimed to understand how microgravity conditions affected the growth of potatoes. Potatoes were chosen for their resilience to different climates and ability to thrive in extreme conditions. We need our stomach acid to be super acidic to break down all the variety of foods we eat. It's so strong that it can even dissolve some metals. For example, razor blades dissolve in stomach acid pretty quickly. After 24 hours, they're already 63% gone. Double-edged blades can be broken within 15 hours, while single-edged blades disappear in just 2 hours. Batteries are safe, but pennies don't even get a scratch. Good thing our stomach has a protective layer of mucus and bicarbonate to keep everything in check. The reason we're taller in the morning than at night is the intervertebral discs in our spine. These discs are mostly water, and throughout the day, they get squished down from all the bending and twisting we do. But when we sleep, our spines get a chance to relax, and the discs soak up more fluid, making us a bit taller in the morning. Scientists have found that there are some pretty big gaps between adult brains and teenage brains. One key player in this brain game is the prefrontal cortex. This part of the brain handles important stuff like decision-making and impulse control, but it's not all grown up until you hit your 20s. Adults have their prefrontal cortex in full swing, helping them make smart choices and think things through. Teens, on the other hand, might be more likely to let their emotions guide their decisions. If a cow ever smiles at you, you're gonna be in for a shock. They don't even have upper front teeth. Instead, they have a special dental pad that helps them munch on grass like a pro. When it comes to chewing, cows have it down to a science. They have sharp incisors at the bottom of their mouth for cutting grass and molars at the back for grinding it all up. It all works smoothly, like a quality food processor. Researchers have discovered a penguin species that lived 37 million years ago and would have been as tall as most humans. This giant penguin, also known as the Colossus penguin, stood at a whopping 7 feet tall from toe to beak tip and weighed as much as 250 pounds. To put that in perspective, today's biggest penguin, the emperor penguin, is only 3.6 feet tall and weighs between 50 and 100 pounds. The researchers have also found the longest recorded fused ankle foot bone and parts of a wing bone from this ancient species. With their larger build, these giant penguins were able to dive underwater for longer periods of time, up to 40 minutes, to hunt for fish. Every year, people around the world take about 1.81 trillion photos. That's around 57,000 photos snapped every second, or a whopping 5 billion pics snapped daily. These days, we take more photos every 2 minutes than were taken in the entire 19th century. Cheese! In Singapore, researchers gave cyborg cockroaches a spin in the desert to try them out for search and rescue missions down the road. Turns out, a team of 20 roaches decked out with computer backpacks can actually work together as a swarm. The scientists were able to steer the roaches by sending commands through the backpacks, thanks to a cool new algorithm they came up with. These high-tech bugs could be a real game changer in disaster situations when it comes to sniffing out survivors. What do peanut butter and an engagement ring have in common? Both of them contain diamonds. Scientists have learned how to turn peanut butter into diamonds. They extracted oxygen from CO2, got carbon, and then put it under intense pressure, forming diamonds in the end. Double-stuffed Oreo cookies aren't double-stuffed in fact. A math teacher, Dan Anderson, weighed 10 regular Oreos, 10 double-stuffed Oreos, 10 mega-stuffed Oreos, and 5 wafers. Turns out, double-stuffed Oreos are only 1.86 stuffed Oreos. Next time you ditch your favorite candies because of your fear of cavities, think twice about what you replace those candies with. Crackers are even more harmful for your teeth than sugar. It's not sugar, but acid that decays the teeth enamel. Sticky crackers produce that acid. It's a good environment for bacteria. They're gonna feast in between your teeth. Water is something that just can't go off. How come there are these expiration dates on water bottles then? The expiration date on mineral water doesn't refer to the water. It's about the bottle that can actually get expired. The thing is, over time, it starts leaking some chemicals that aren't quite safe. In 1975, in Puerto Rico, a farmer saw most of his goats lying lifeless on the ground. He got closer and saw that the animals were stiff and had 2 puncture marks on their necks. Goats were not the only animals that were hurt. Many pigs, cows, and geese lost their lives too. They all had the same distinctive bite marks on their necks, and all had been drained of their vital fluids. The locals immediately jumped to conclusions and blamed dogs, and the authorities didn't bother to do a better investigation and just said dogs had done it without looking for any proof. A couple of days later, though, many more animals were found deceased. Among them was a cow that had literally been opened, and it had a lot of scratches on its head. The farmer next door reported that his chickens had been destroyed by something. In just a few weeks, the creature took the lives of 90 farm animals. After some time, another farmer said that 10 of his goats had been drained, 7 had been hurt, and 11 were missing. This time, the authorities didn't waste any time and started the monster hunt, but they had no luck finding the culprit. The incident was all over the local newspaper, and the beast was named the Vampire of Mocha. The incident caught the attention of the Agricultural Commission, and scientist Juan Rivera was tasked to solve this otherworldly mystery. His first suspect was a Puerto Rican boa. This non-venomous snake can grow to be a little over 6 feet. Still, its diet consists of only small prey. It's also very shy of humans and other animals. It avoids bigger creatures at all costs. You're more likely to see fish climbing trees than this boa taking down a whole cow. Near the crime scene, a large cave was discovered, and we all know that weird creatures like living in dark, cold caves. In the cave, they found some crazy-looking bats. As we've seen in movies, bats can turn into vampires, so they must be the culprit. But no, bats were as innocent as they could be. Their favorite food wasn't cows or goats, it was figs. They were peaceful fruit-eating bats that didn't care about animals. Again, the researcher hit a wall. Suddenly, all the terror stopped in July 1975. It seemed like the creature had vanished into thin air, but not for long. 2 decades later, 62 miles from the previous site, more animals were found. A local vet examined them. He was terrified to discover that every animal had two precisely cut holes like he had never seen before. The animals were anemic and looked like they'd passed away recently. By the looks of it, the creature's favorite food was goats, and that's how it got the infamous name we all heard of, Chupacabra, which means the goat sucker. Dogs, chickens, rabbits, and other animals were not off the menu. In short time, the Chupacabra took 1,000 farm animals. Now, this animal had a name, but people still had zero idea about what the Chupacabra looked like, which was terrifying. In Canovanas, Madeline and her mother reported seeing a weird creature that could have been the Chupacabra. They said it had been walking on two legs like a human and resembled a kangaroo. They mentioned that the monster also had spikes on the back, no ears, large dark eyes, and two holes for a nose. It had 2 arms with 3 fingers. The Chupacabra seemed to like Madeline's house because her husband and his coworker found it in the garage. They tried to capture it but didn't succeed. Madeline later drew a detailed sketch of it. Many people saw the sketch and reported seeing a similar creature. They claimed it had strong legs and wings and smelled like sulfur. Take all these descriptions with a grain of salt. If they'd been true, they would have been all over the news. But still, keep in mind these descriptions. They will be important later in the story. In 1976, on some talk show, they talked about the Chupacabra, and the show quickly went viral. Soon, people started reporting having seen a similar creature in Florida and Mexico. Many said that the stories were like a unicorn rodeo. They were totally made up. In Mexico, 2 skeptical inquiries, Patricia and Mario, laid traps around those farms where the Chupacabra had allegedly been seen. They caught some animals in their traps, but no sign of the goat sucker. They only captured wild dogs. The police stated that the Chupacabra was just a wild dog, not a mythical creature. And still, in the next 5 years, there were numerous sightings of the Chupacabra worldwide. On the 13th of August of the year 2000, a farmer from Nicaragua found 25 of his sheep and 35 of his neighbor's sheep hurt. So he decided to take the matter into his own hands. One night, he was patiently waiting in the pitch-black night for the creature to appear. Suddenly, from the corner of his eye, he saw something and managed to hit it. The creature passed away. Finally, they had proof that the Chupacabra was not just a fairy tale. It was a big thing. Later, the Chupacabra was examined by a vet. The vet was shocked because he had no idea what the creature was. Remember Madeline's description? Well, the vet described the animal differently, but his story turned out to be more plausible. This Chupacabra had large teeth, giant claws, greenish eyes, bat-like skin, and a crest sticking out of its back. The vet concluded that the animal was some kind of hybrid. They thought it was a cross between a wolf and a crocodile, but it sounds like an exaggeration and is hard to believe. We all know that such a mix is impossible. They did some tests on the body at the university in Nicaragua, and the results didn't quite deliver what they had expected. The animal was a wild dog with mange. Mange is an itchy skin disease that causes dogs to lose their hair. It's also highly contagious. When a dog has mange, their skin becomes scaly and wrinkled. When they returned the body, the farmer noticed it wasn't his Chupacabra. 7 years later, another body was found in Texas. Phyllis Cannon returned to her farm and noticed that some of her chickens had passed away. All seemed to be anemic. Later, she saw coyote-looking creatures that didn't have any hair. More of her animals were harmed, so she had to set up cameras on her farm. But unfortunately, like always, she didn't manage to record anything. Surprisingly, she got a call from a local farmer who had found the Chupacabra hit by a car. Later, another body was found much closer to her farm. She took some pictures of the animal, and soon, those images were all over the internet. Phyllis was curious and sent 5 DNA samples to 5 different universities. The results didn't match any animal in the archives. Researchers had no idea what it was, but it wasn't a dog. Phyllis still has one animal in her freezer and a taxidermied specimen in her house. There are many theories about the Chupacabra. Some claim that the animal is a genetically modified monkey that escaped the lab. Others state that it's some mysterious, otherworldly creature. The most consistent hypothesis is that the Chupacabra is a mix between a Mexican wolf and a coyote with mange. Now, do you remember that Phyllis said that she had sent samples to 5 universities and no match had been found? Well, it turned out she hadn't been telling the truth. At one university, they found that the animal was a mix between a coyote and a Mexican wolf and that it had mange. Animals with mange are weak and will likely try to hunt farm animals to survive. People, when they see something they don't know, tend to exaggerate, which is why all witnesses describe the animal differently.
Space, the final frontier. It's a vast and mysterious expanse that has fascinated us for centuries. But as much as we've learned about it, there are still plenty of things that we've been lied to about when it comes to space. Let's take a look at some of the biggest lies we've been told about this topic. First off, we have the idea that space is just this pristine, untouched wilderness. But that's not exactly true. We've been littering space with our debris for decades. Everything from old satellites to rocket parts. In fact, there are over 20,000 pieces of debris orbiting Earth right now, and they're causing all sorts of problems for future space missions. So if you're planning on visiting space anytime soon, watch where you go. You never know what kind of garbage might be floating around. Did you know that the sun is not actually yellow? It's green. Well, kind of. You see, scientists measure the temperature of a star by the color spectrum it emits. Cooler stars appear red, while the hottest of stars look blue. Our sun emits most of its energy at a wavelength that's close to green. But because it emits other wavelengths too, all these colors mix together and your eyes see this vibrant mixture as white. From Earth, however, the sun looks yellow because our atmosphere is really good at scattering blue light. If our star was actually yellow, Earth would become a frozen rock, and we'd all be polar bears. Plus, the sun isn't on fire for real. It's a big ball of gas, mostly made of hydrogen and helium, and it works more like a gigantic nuclear reactor, constantly fusing hydrogen atoms to create helium inside its core. This process releases enormous amounts of energy. That's why the sun is so hot. Oh, and speaking of setting things on fire, explosions in space aren't real. Sorry, Star Wars fans, a spaceship can't go down in a violent blast because there is no air out there in space. No air means no oxygen, and no oxygen means no fire. Now, you might also think that there are too many stars in the night sky for you to count, but in fact, you can do that. According to the Yale Bright Star Catalog, there are 9,110 stars that you can see from Earth with the unaided eye. So, technically, you can count them, but I wouldn't be surprised if you lost count. And if you're worried about flying through an asteroid belt, don't be. Although it does have trillions of space rocks that range in size from space dust to a quarter of the size of the moon, they're very spread out. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter is 140 million miles across, which is 1.5 times the distance between Earth and the Sun. This spreads space rocks thousands of miles apart, making it almost impossible for a spacecraft to collide with one. You'll instantly freeze in space without a suit. Nope, you won't turn into a popsicle right away. It's going to take a bit longer than that because heat and cold don't really move very quickly in the vacuum of space. But unfortunately for you, there's a bigger problem at hand. You won't be able to breathe. After just 15 seconds, your brain won't be getting enough oxygen from your blood, and you'll pass out. And then after just 2 minutes, it's curtains for the rest of your organs. So, in short, if you find yourself playing astronaut without a spacesuit, it's game over pretty quickly. Did you know that space doesn't have any temperature at all? That's because the temperature is defined by the speed at which particles move and the amount of energy they have. In the true vacuum of space, there are no particles to move around, making it temperatureless. Of course, some parts of space are really hot, like areas around stars. But the further away you get from stars, the more spread out particles are, making those areas of space pretty chilly. Number 9 is our planet's shape. No, it's not flat, but it's not a perfect sphere either. Yeah, it bulges at the equator because of our planet's wild spin. It's like Earth is doing its own little dance. And because of this bulging, launching spaceships from the equator is much easier than from the poles. Now, when it comes to sound in space, it's a bit of a tricky situation. You might think that no one can hear you scream, but that's not entirely accurate. The thing is, sound needs something to travel through, like air or water. In space, things are super spread out, so all those epic space battles and galactic explosions would be completely silent. Yet there are some places in space with enough particles for sound to travel through. For example, you can hear the black hole at the center of the Perseus galaxy cluster. Another myth is about zero gravity. That's not a thing. There's still some gravity hanging around the International Space Station, about 90% of what we feel on good old Earth. But astronauts get to float around because they're basically free-falling around the planet. And let's be real, Hollywood's version of space travel is not factual. Sure, orbits are a thing, but different altitudes mean different speeds. So moving from one orbit to another isn't exactly a walk in the park. You can't just push yourself in the right direction and hope for the best. You gotta take those orbital velocities into account. This reminded me of the 2013 movie Gravity and how Sandra Bullock tried to survive in space. Hollywood sure added some fuel to these myths. Yet again, who can blame them? Back in 1976, NASA's Viking 1 spacecraft snapped a photo of a curious rock formation on Mars that looked suspiciously like a face. Some folks out there claimed that it must have been proof of extraterrestrial life on the red planet, but NASA had a different take. According to the space agency, the face was nothing more than a bunch of rocks piled up in such a way that the shadows they cast created an illusion of facial features. It turns out it was just a regular hill that got a little too much credit for being photogenic. The solar system stays in place. Lie! It's zooming through space at a speed of 140 miles per second, which means that it's whizzing through the cosmos faster than a cheetah chasing its prey. It takes us 230 million years for the solar system to complete a full orbit around the Milky Way. It's a good thing it isn't getting a speeding ticket, because that would be one astronomical fine. Eh? Without the sun, planets would be pretty chilly. We're talking about temperatures as low as -455 degrees Fahrenheit. Brrr. But with the sun around, the planets get to enjoy much more livable temperatures. Of course, not all planets are created equal. Mercury, for example, is the closest to the sun. Venus, on the other hand, is farther away, but somehow manages to be even hotter than Mercury. The distance from the sun isn't the only factor that affects a planet's temperature. Other things like the planet's size and reflectivity also come into play. So Mercury being the hottest planet in our solar system is a false proposition. No, just because it's the closest one to the sun doesn't mean it's the hottest. Even though we've been deceived in some ways, that doesn't make space any less amazing. It's still a vast, beautiful, and utterly fascinating part of our universe. And there's still so much we have yet to discover. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll really discover little green people out there. Or maybe we'll find out something even more incredible. Until then, we'll just have to keep dreaming and exploring. There, you got 14 things on our list. Do you have any other space myths to debunk?
Hey, it's quiz time! Ready to strain your brain with these mind-bending true or false trivia questions? Let's get to it then! Spider silk was once used to make guitar strings. This is false. Spider silk was never used to make guitar strings, but it has been used to make violin strings. This is because spider silk can produce unique and thrilling sounds. making them a useful resource for building musical instruments. Astronauts crave spicy food in space. True! In space, most astronauts will lose their sense of smell, and our sense of smell is usually what makes us perceive the taste of food. Because of that, many astronauts begin to crave fiery sauces, such as Tabasco sauce, to make up for the lack of flavor in their food. Astronauts see the sun as yellow while they are in space. This is false. While in space, astronauts see the sun as white instead of yellow. As Earthlings, we perceive the sun as yellow due to a distortion caused by the Earth's atmosphere. But since there's no atmosphere in space, the sun appears like a huge white glowing sphere. A coconut is a nut. False. Coconut is actually a one-seeded drupe, i.e., a fruit with a hard covering and closing as a seed. In case you're wondering, peaches and olives are also drupes. Some lizards have green blood. This is actually true. The green-blooded skink, a lizard living in the country of Papua New Guinea, has high levels of a greenish pigment called biliverdin, which gives its blood a green color. Sound travels faster through steel than air. You bet it's true. Sound travels about 17 times faster through steel than through air. This happens because molecules in a solid material are packed closer together than they are in a liquid or gas, which allows sound waves to pass more easily through them. In England, black cats are considered bad luck. False. Although black cats are considered symbols of bad luck in many places, they're actually considered good luck in England. NASCAR race car drivers can lose up to 20 pounds of sweat in a single race. This is false. Still, NASCAR race drivers can lose up to 10 pounds of sweat in just one race. This happens due to a variety of things, including the high temperatures outside, heavy uniforms, and accumulated heat inside the cars. Odontophobia is the fear of teeth. Yes, it is. People with odontophobia, also known as dentophobia or dental fear, do not enjoy going to the dentist. A referee at a FIFA World Cup soccer tournament runs about 30 miles during an average game. False. Referees sure run a lot, but they run an average of 12 miles per game. The world's largest desert, the Sahara in Africa, is about the size of the Amazon rainforest in Latin America. False. The Sahara is enormous, but its 3.3 million square miles are about the size of Australia, not the Amazon. Geckos usually eat their skin as soon as they shed it. True! Geckos love to munch on their skin, but they can't live on that alone, of course. They also eat bugs. Yum! Ostriches are one of the few species of bird that cannot fly. This is absolutely true. Ostriches have wings, but they can't fly. However, ostriches are fleet, strong runners. They can sprint up to 43 miles an hour and run over 31 miles an hour. They may use their wings as rudders to help them change direction while running. The first macaroni and cheese recipe ever to be registered was back in the 13th century. True! It's hard to believe, but macaroni and cheese is believed to be a traditional dish. Foodie historians found an Italian cookbook from the 13th century with what they believe to be an early mac and cheese recipe. The black box in a plane is black. As confusing as this may sound, this is false. Airplane boxes are actually orange. The so-called black boxes document everything that happens on board a plane. In case of an accident, they need to be a bright color in order to make them easier to find. Haven't you heard? Orange is the new black. M&M stands for Mars and Murray. Yup, this is true. These are the last names of the candy's co-creators. A is the most common letter used in the English language. False. The most common letter used in English is E. It appears in about 11% of all English words according to the Oxford dictionaries. A lion's roar can be heard up to 5 miles away. This is true. Monaco is the smallest country in the world. Nope, false. The smallest country in the world is Vatican City in Rome, with a total of 17 square kilometers. Madonna's real name is Madonna. True, Madonna was born Madonna Louise Ciccone. Coffee is made from berries. This is true. The liquid coffee we drink goes through a long process. Originally, farmers picked out coffee berries, then they are processed and dried. The beans are then roasted and ground and finally ready to be consumed. An octopus has 3 hearts. True. An octopus has 1 main systemic heart to pump blood around its body. The 2 additional hearts are responsible for pumping blood over each of its gills. Venus is the hottest planet in the solar system. True. Although Mercury is closer to the Sun, it has no atmosphere, so it is subject to great temperature fluctuations. But Venus has an average surface temperature of around 850 degrees Fahrenheit, making it the hottest planet in our system. Bananas are curved because they grow upwards toward the sun. True. A process called negative geotropism means the fruit grows upwards to break through the canopy. Fish can blink. This is false. It would be pretty cute if they could, though. Hot and cold water sound the same when poured. False. Weird fact, but they sound different due to the fact that hot water has a higher viscosity than cold water. Denmark has twice as many pigs as they have people living there. True. Denmark has a human population of more than 5 million, but its pig population is twice as big as that. No one has ever traveled around the world in a hot air balloon. This is false. In March 1999, Brian Jones and Bertrand Piccard made the first non-stop flight around the world in a balloon. Their journey began in Switzerland and finished over Africa. It took them just 20 days. Scientists developed a fork that measures how fast you eat your food. Yup, it's pretty true. The inventors hope that people will use this fork in order to learn to eat more slowly. The acronym NASA stands for the National Astronomy and Space Administration. False. NASA stands for National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Astronauts grow about 6 inches in space. False. 6 inches is a lot. Usually, astronauts can grow between 1 and 2 inches when they're traveling through space. This happens due to the lack of gravity, which makes the human spine stretch out, causing astronauts to grow a little bit. There is a scientific reason why people cringe when they listen to nails scraping a chalkboard. True. Fingernails scraping a chalkboard produce a similar sound frequency to those of a chimpanzee's warning call. So the sense of distress humans might feel when fingernails scrape could be a sign that our fundamental primate danger sensors have been triggered. Medieval bakers used to color their flour white with the help of chalk. This is true. Back in the day, white bread was a sign of wealth and was sold at higher prices, so some bakers used to color their flours with chalk in order to sell whiter bread.
The legend goes that a dwarf named Fafnir was famous for his strength and courage. Because of his qualities, he was tasked with protecting their kingdom. Dwarves were known to gather a lot of wealth, so a bit of added security was a must. I mean, they lived in a house made from gold and precious gems. But Fafnir also had another special talent. He was able to shapeshift. Tricked by Loki, the Norse spirit of mischief, Fafnir was taken over by his greed and the shine of his father's treasure. He decided he did not want to share any of it, not even with his father or his brothers. He stole it and ran away all by himself to a place he'd be hard to find, the middle of the desert. To protect his wealth, Fafnir transformed into a huge dragon. His new appearance looked like a huge snake, powerful and scary. His magical powers did not end there, though. Because the dragon couldn't fly, he also spread poison all around his new home, so no one had a chance to survive if they wanted to take his gold away. Fafnir was soon defeated by a young hero named Sigurd. The legend of Fafnir tries to explain why family is more important than greed. It also shows the many magical powers dragons possess. But the most interesting part is that it's quite a good example of how dragons came to be in our tales. But hey, this is just one of the many stories mentioning dragons. Just switch on your TV or peek into any bookstore, and you'll surely stumble upon dragons somewhere. Variations of dragon-like creatures have been described in stories from all over the world, from Asia to Northern Europe. Most of these creatures are depicted with reptile-like bodies, wings, and claws. And the scariest trait of them all, they can breathe fire out of their mouths. The name of these creatures comes from the Latin word draconum, which translates to huge serpent. But let's take a trip down memory lane to see how it all started. An Asian historian, for example, discovered some fossils back in the 4th century BCE and decided that he'd stumbled upon dragons. It's easy to understand why he got so confused if you look at a fossilized stegosaurus. It was 30 feet long, 14 feet tall, and covered in armored plates and spikes. The Nile crocodile might have gotten mistaken for a dragon too. It still exists today and lives in sub-Saharan Africa. But it may have been more popular in ancient times. When reaching maturity, Nile crocodiles can grow up to 18 feet long. But that's not all. It can even walk with its body off the ground, and some were even pictured standing on their 2 back legs. Goannas are dragon-like lizards that live in Australia. Large as they are, they also have razor-sharp teeth and claws, and are also known to even produce venom. It's easy to see why goannas may be the source for the Australian version of dragons. When humans first discovered whale bones back in the day, we had no idea these animals lived in the sea. Given their size, we surely must have thought they were dangerous. And because we rarely see whales, if we don't go underwater of course, they were poorly understood and easily mistaken for dragons too. Probably the most interesting source of dragon mythology is actually the human brain. In a book called An Instinct for Dragons, there was a theory which claimed that dragons existed in almost all ancient cultures because we had evolved to fear large predators to survive. We aren't the only mammals to do this. Monkeys have an innate fear of snakes and large cats too, for example. When you combine these natural traits with folklore, you get a lot of dragon stories everywhere, adapted to each region. Reptilian beasts with magical powers date back as far as the origins of human civilization itself. I'm talking about ancient Mesopotamia. Humans back then used to believe in all sorts of creatures, but their head spirit was Marduk, the patron of the city of Babylon. If you look at the artwork from back then, Marduk was depicted with a snake-like dragon at his side. It could be either nice or vengeful, depending on what mood it was in. If you want to sign up to become a dragon, the first thing they'll ask you at the interview will be if you can breathe fire, of course. So scientists have tried to look into some ways that could make it real for dragons to breathe out fire without damaging their throats. To do that, they examined the bombardier beetle. This eccentric insect can pack up some really hot substances in its belly. Once the creature gets bothered by something, it shoots out a fiery load of chemicals. In all fairness, it's not really fire, but it does burn, so it's close enough. Going back to dragons, they'd need to have similar glands in their throats to produce the same effect. But where do dragons come from? They didn't just appear out of nowhere, regardless of the source you consult. Some tales, like that of Fafnir, say that even humans can turn into dragons. But the most popular theory is that dragons start out as eggs. Some sources even draft a series of stages a dragon has to go through during its life. Everything starts with hatching. Dragons are said to eat their way out of those shells and break the sides of the egg. Then there's the wormling stage, which is what dragon specialists, or dragonologists if you like, call a newly hatched dragon. It's still small and weak, but don't worry, it can take care of itself pretty well. The rest of a dragon's life stages are pretty self-explanatory. There are grown-up dragons, then ancient ones. A dragon's life ends when it reaches the twilight stage. Some sources claim dragons never stopped growing. Others even say they never reach the end of their lives. They just pass on to another type of spiritual existence. Dragons are known to be the symbol of a lot of different things, but that all depends on their origin. In some regions of Asia, they are known to bring luck, power, and wealth. To become a powerful warrior in Britain, you'd need to first defeat a dragon. That's why you often see them on flags. The flag of Wales, for example, has a large red dragon on a green and white background. Western stories aren't as nice to dragons. They are often seen as evil and vengeful. Another myth associated with dragons is that they love gold and precious stones. This greedy side of their temperament seems to date back to ancient Greece, where dragons were tasked with guarding treasures. Some of these guarding dragons were seen in such tales as The Hobbit and in the Harry Potter series. As for dragons' magical abilities, they also vary a lot. Some were said to have blood with supernatural properties. Some were rumored to be able to speak. Others were famous for their wisdom. A lot of dragons in ancient literature could fly or shapeshift, even into humans. Some real-life creatures got their names thanks to bearing a resemblance to dragons, like the dragonfly that has more than 5,000 subspecies we know about. It got its name from folklore tales, as Europeans in the Middle Ages saw it as an evil insect. Dragonflies were accused of some really nasty things, like biting people's eyes and mouths. But the creature that resembles mythical dragons most is a reptile called the flying dragon. They're seen in wooded areas of Southeast Asia. They don't really have wings per se, but parts of their ribs are elongated to support some extra skin that allows them to leap through the air between trees. Those wings are also brightly colored and contrast with their brown bodies.
You have as much hair as a monkey. Now, I don't mean to be insulting, but your fingerprints are not unique. You can hear better after you cover your ears. Now, can these statements be true, or are they nothing but myths? When a person is lying, their own nose can give them away. Can it be true? Yep. Researchers from the University of Granada have discovered that when a person tells a lie, the temperature around their nose and in the inner corners of their eyes rises. This phenomenon got named the Pinocchio effect. Hey, how about this one? People can have as many hairs on their body as chimpanzees. Can you believe this? Surprisingly, this one's true too. The hair count of a person and a chimp, or any other ape of our size, is approximately the same. The only difference is that human body hair is quite fine and often colorless. This makes it hard to see the sheer number of hairs. Your lungs are identical. It sounds reasonable, but is it true? Well, it's nothing but a myth. Your left lung consists of 2 lobes, while your right lung is divided into 3 parts. Plus, the lung on the left is a bit smaller. It has to make room for your heart. By the way, your lungs also contain around 1,500 miles of airways. It's more than half the distance between New York and Los Angeles. There are also more than 300 million alveoli, tiny balloon-shaped air sacs in your lungs. I bet you've heard this one before. Carrots can make your eyesight better. True or myth? Unfortunately, this idea isn't true. Neither can carrots get you better nighttime vision. Carrots are indeed packed with vitamin A. It benefits your body and protects your eyes. But even these veggies can't save you from wearing glasses if you need them. Some people sneeze when looking at the sun. Now, do they? Yes, that's true. About 25% of people have an interesting reaction to sunlight. They sneeze. This phenomenon even has its own name, the photic sneeze reflex. Ooh. Shaving body hair makes it grow darker and thicker. Is it the truth? Don't worry, that's just a myth. It might look as if your body hair has changed in thickness, rate of growth, or even color after getting shaved. But it's just an illusion. Shaving makes the tips of hair follicles blunt. That's why they look rougher and darker than usual. But once your hair grows in again, it'll start to look the same as it did before you shaved it. You have unique fingerprints. Ah, this one must be true, right? The problem with this statement is that scientists can't prove that each set of fingerprints is absolutely unique. It does seem to people, but it's impossible to check. And while this is improbable, people with identical fingerprints can actually turn out to be real. People have more than 5 senses. Is it an appealing myth or reality? There are 5 most obvious senses: vision, smell, touch, hearing, and taste. But how about thermoception, the sense of heat? Nociception, the perception of pain, or the perception of your body awareness? Proprioception, close your eyes and touch your nose. Got it? That's proprioception in action. This list can be much longer. Some experts state people have from 21 to 53 senses. Your fingers actually get pruny after you spend too much time in the water for your safety. Is it true? What's your bet? Scientists believe so, but first things first, pruny fingers are caused by narrowing blood vessels. When you stay in the water for a long time, your nervous system makes your blood vessels shrink. Your body sends the blood away from that area, and this loss of blood makes your vessels thinner. The skin starts folding over them, forming those funny wrinkles. Scientists aren't 100% sure, but they think this process occurs to help you have a better grip when your hands and feet are wet. People only use 10% of their brains. Oh, how I wish it was just a myth. And it is. Apparently, you use almost 100% of your brain every day. This organ is active all the time, even when you're asleep. When you're snoozing, your frontal cortex, which is responsible for higher-level thinking, and the areas that help you sense your surrounding, are still doing their job. For some people, the world is much brighter than for others. How come? That's actually true. There are 3 kinds of cone cells in the average person's eyes. These cones help to recognize the colors in the blue, red, and green spectrums. Thanks to them, most people can distinguish around 1 million different shades. But those with technochromacy have 4 cones in their eyes. This feature allows them to see up to 100 million different hues. This vision anomaly is extremely rare, and women have it more often than men. But do you know the funniest thing about this? Most people with tetrachromacy don't even realize they see the world brighter than others. Sometimes you can hear better after closing your ears. Well, it seems counterproductive, but can it be true? Indeed, if you're in a loud place, for example, in a club or at a concert, you should close your ears to hear your friends better. Push the tragus, which is the pointy skin-covered cartilage in front of your ear canal, into your ear. Then turn this ear toward your friend. Voila! You can prevent yourself from sneezing. Oh, that would be very convenient, but maybe it's just a myth. It's true. If you don't want to sneeze, press the skin on the bridge of your nose with your fingers. When you do it, your brain receives an alarm signal. It immediately puts the brakes on all other processes, including the sneezing reflex. Okay, you're going to finish these 5 episodes of your favorite series now and catch up on sleep later. But can you? Unfortunately, no. You can try to catch up on sleep at the weekend or take lots of afternoon naps during the week, but it won't help. Your body doesn't work this way. If you didn't have enough sleep the night before or went to bed really late, sleeping until noon won't save the day. Even worse, too much sleep will make you feel groggy. Some people have more ribs than others. Is it a myth? Nah, it's true. Most people have 12 pairs of ribs, which makes 24 in total. But 1 in 200 people has an additional 25th rib. It's called cervical and forms at the base of the neck above the collarbone. It can grow on the left, right, or even both sides of the body. Those people who have extra ribs most likely know nothing about this modification. That's because an extra rib rarely forms completely and can look like a thin strand of tissue. In this case, you won't see it even on an X-ray. You should wait for at least a half an hour after eating before you go swimming. Well, it sounds reasonable, but is it true? That's just a myth. The general idea behind this claim is that eating a large meal makes your blood flow towards your stomach to help with the digestion process. At the same time, your muscles don't get enough blood, which leads to cramps. But in reality, swimming right after having eaten something isn't dangerous at all. Your blood doesn't get diverted enough for it to cause any serious problems. Some people's snores can get louder than a working kitchen appliance. What do you think about this? Well, on average, when a person snores, the sound doesn't get louder than 60 decibels, which is as loud as a regular conversation. But sometimes, the noise level can reach 80 decibels, and that's as loud as a working food blender. Not all people have round pupils. Can it be true? Yup. 2 people out of every 10,000 have an unusually shaped pupil. Most commonly, it resembles a keyhole. This eye disorder is called coloboma. Interestingly, some people with this condition don't have any problems with their vision.
Your body actually glows. It emits a super faint light that's at its strongest at around 3 to 4 p.m. The sad news is that this glowing is 1,000 times less intense than what your eyes can see. Humans are the only animals that have chins. Even our closest genetic relatives, gorillas and chimps, lack this small piece of bone that extends forward from the jaw. Their lower jaws slant down and back from their front teeth. Scientists still haven't figured out this mystery. The opinions about why people are made this way differ. Some researchers think chins help us chew our food. Others are sure they have something to do with speaking. A few of us think it's simply a special place to grow a goatee. The most abundant element in the human body is oxygen at 65%. but it also contains lithium, cobalt, gold, and uranium. The rarest one of all is radium. On average, humans yawn 20 times a day, partially spontaneously, for example, when you're tired, but sometimes when someone yawns near you. Scientists think it could be a thing called social mirroring. Usually, when animals mimic each other, they recognize some action as useful, so they decide to do it too. With humans, it happens when someone crosses legs, laughs, smiles at you, or your stomach acid breaks down the foods you eat and turns them into easy-to-digest particles. It also stops nasty pathogens and microbes that could make you sick. In fact, your stomach acid is so strong that it can even dissolve bone and metal. Don't start munching down on your soda cans, though. That's probably not going to end well. Your brain has more than 86 billion nerve cells. They're all joined together by 100 trillion connections. That's even more than the number of stars in the Milky Way galaxy. There's a good chance you can guess someone's name based on how they look. Researchers showed portrait photos to a group of people, with 4 names written below. They were asked to choose the right name for this or that person. The law of chance says you'll guess it 25% of the time, but in this research, people got the names correct at a rate of 25 to 40%, and there were more than 94,000 faces shown. Let's say a man is called Bob. People will expect for him to have a rounder face than Tim. They expect Bob to be more jolly and ready to hang out with people. It has to affect his facial appearance in some way. A woman called Catherine can be considered more serious, studious, and concentrated. That could eventually influence her facial muscles as well. When ancient Romans flexed their biceps, they thought their muscles looked like mice. That's why the word muscle translates as little mouse in Latin. Your left lung is smaller than the right one because it shares space with your heart. Experts used to think that we can only distinguish 10,000 smells. In fact, a recent study found human beings can recognize 1 trillion smells. Millennials, or people born between 1981 and 1996, are more forgetful than older people. The main cause of their forgetfulness comes from higher levels of stress. So come on, dude, chill out, okay? Some scientists think that the purpose of fingerprints is a better grip, but others believe they're there to help wick water off them and allow the skin to stretch when needed to protect it from damage. There's also a theory saying that fingerprints improve the sense of touch. Hot coffee can taste better than cold coffee. Your taste bud receptors are most sensitive when your food is at or a little bit above room temperature. Hot coffee can then seem less bitter because taste buds that detect bitterness are more sensitive when the coffee is cold. The biggest molecule in the human body is the chromosome 1. A human cell has 23 chromosome pairs, and each chromosome 1 is made of 10 billion atoms. You inhale 25 sextillion molecules in just one breath. That's 25 followed by 21 zeros. When you're walking faster, at some point, you'll feel the natural urge to start jogging. Your body wants to have a stable state, whether you're running or walking. So, if you're walking fast, it will unconsciously force you to start running. One theory is, we use more energy when walking faster than running, so that's one of the ways the body saves energy. Your pinky is a powerful little thing. Without it, your hand would lose a significant part of its power. Your index and middle fingers cooperate with your thumb to grab and pinch, and your pinky, together with your ring finger, provides grip strength. The fattiest organ in your body is your brain. Fat makes up at least 60% of its dry weight. This quality got the brain to the Guinness World Records. The organ contains around 25% of your body's cholesterol, which is vital for the brain's well-being. Your bones are 4 times harder than concrete. The strongest bone in your body is the femur. It can support up to 30 times the weight of a grown-up person. Even crazier is that our bones are made up of composite material, meaning they're both hard and elastic at the same time. Your fingernails grow twice as fast as your toenails. It would take 15.5 months for your toenails to grow 1 inch, but only 7 months for your fingernails to get this long. The outer layer of your skin is thicker on your feet than on other parts of your body. The heart has its own electrical system and can continue beating even when it's disconnected from the body. The vessels in your body are long enough to circle the Earth twice or more. The idea that we use only 10% of our brains is a myth. At any given time, you use almost 100%. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to perform simple tasks, like drink a cup of coffee. More than 70% of your brain consists of water, and it needs 20% of your body's oxygen supply. The average lifespan of one eyebrow hair is 4 months. The body of a 110-pound person contains 40 tablespoons of salt. If you ironed out all the wrinkles in your brain and laid it flat, it would be the size of a pillowcase. The brain wrinkles as there's not a lot of room in the skull, so it folds over itself as it grows. By the way, don't do that pillowcase thing with your brain. Trust me on this one. We spend 40% of our life with our eyes closed. Most of that time is when we're asleep. But don't forget to count blinking too, or while driving. You produce around 85,000 pints of spit in your lifetime. That's enough saliva to fill around 500 bathtubs. Enough said. The highest blood flow isn't actually in your heart, and it's not in your brain either. It's in your kidneys. It's super hard for us to grasp just how small an atom is. But think of it this way. Your body is made up of a staggering 7 octillion atoms. Yeah, doesn't that look like a 7 being chased by a whole mob of zeros? For adults, the blood makes up 7 to 8% of the total body weight. About 55% of your blood is liquid plasma. The rest is red and white blood cells and platelets. They form clots and prevent bleeding. You can't swallow and breathe at the same time. The food you swallow and the air you breathe go down the same part of your throat at first. Only a bit deeper does the passage split into the esophagus, for food and liquid, and the trachea, for air. When you swallow, your airway gets automatically closed off. This prevents you from accidentally inhaling food. But occasionally, it still happens. There's a name for the growling sound that your stomach makes when you're hungry. It's called borborygmi. It takes 6 to 8 hours for food to travel through your stomach and small intestine. That's because your body is trying to absorb all its nutrients. The idea that the tongue has flavor zones is a myth. All taste buds can detect 5 tastes, but some receptors are more responsive than others. Human beings are the only animals that willingly delay sleep. Just make sure you get enough.
The water is bubbling under the fishing boat as if something is coming up out of the water. It gets closer and closer. The water seems to boil. Suddenly, you see giant jaws and glistening teeth. Seconds later, a huge shark jumps out of the water and crushes the boat in one bite. It was the Megalodon, the largest fish that ever existed on Earth. Now, we pictured the Megalodon as this, an enlarged version of the white shark for a long time. But scientists continue to argue about its appearance. So far, they agree that the image of this giant shark was wrong. Here's the data that scientists are sure of. Size, about 50 feet long. That's as big as a school bus and comparable to the length of a subway car. 8.5 times the height of an average person. Let's compare it to the modern white shark. The Megalodon is 3 times bigger, but that's just a rough estimate. We don't have a fully preserved skeleton of the Megalodon. That's because it didn't have any bones, but cartilage. Not much of that left in the 3.6 million years since the Megalodons went extinct. All that survived were teeth and a few vertebrae. By comparison, dinosaurs went extinct about 66 million years ago. But their solid bones are perfectly preserved, and we have many different examples of their skeletons. 7 inches long, bigger than the palm of your hand, and 3 times the size of a modern white shark's teeth. The Megalodon jaw was 6 feet wide and chalked up 5 rows of teeth, a total of 276 razor-sharp chompers. The other preserved remains are the vertebral column. It consists of 150 vertebrae, each 6 inches wide. They contain much calcium because, well, Megalodon love fresh cold milk. Nah, it's because the vertebrae had to withstand the enormous mass of a giant shark. Based on those fossils, scientists created a model and calculated only the approximate size of the Megalodon. But it could hardly have been any bigger. It's all about breathing. The bigger the fish, the more oxygen it needs. which means a larger gill area. That's the organ that filters the water and collects oxygen. If the Megalodon were any larger, it would have trouble breathing. So, scientists believe that 50 feet is the maximum size of an individual. On average, they were a few feet smaller. Whew. Now, let's talk weight. On average, one Megalodon weighed about 30 to 35 tons. By comparison, a white shark weighs 1 ton, which is 30 times less. Hey, trust me. A school bus is 4 times lighter at 7.5 tons. The weight of a Megalodon can be compared to an empty Boeing 737. But the modern blue whale beats the Megalodon in size and weight. 98 feet long versus 50, almost twice as long. Blue whale's weight is about 180 tons. That's like 6 Megalodons or 6 passenger planes, or like 33 adult elephants. Hey, don't you love the comparisons? Now, about the appearance of the Megalodon. Scientists believe it didn't look like a white shark. The Megalodon belongs to a different fish family and most likely looked like a giant sand tiger shark. Flattened snout, small eyes. Its dorsal fin is moved backwards. The sand shark has 2 dorsal fins about the same size. The coloration is light brown with a white belly. It may have had brown-red spots like a sand shark all over its body. We used to think of the Megalodon as something scary from the first finds of its fossils. That was back in the Renaissance era. People found some teeth in the rocks. At first, these teeth were thought to be the tongues of dragons or snakes. And here's the first drawing of what the owner of these teeth supposedly looked like. A massive snout with a scary nose and a bunch of razor-sharp teeth. We also have the evidence that Megalodons were brutal hunters, kings of the food chain. The first combat tool in their arsenal was the battering ram. The Megalodon was a slow swimmer, though. It could only accelerate up to 11 miles per hour. In comparison, the modern white shark can reach 35 miles per hour in a dash for its meal. The fastest human swimmer could only go 6 miles per hour. Well, good luck with that. But the Megalodon had incredible mass. Though slow, its battering ram had tremendous power. The Megalodon would take its prey by surprise. It had only one chance to hit it. If it missed, it would take too long for a second round. The maneuverability of the Megalodon was comparable to a large truck. But if the ram was successful, the prey was stunned and couldn't move. At this point, the Megalodon aimed at vulnerable spots, like the fins and tail of the prey. Scientists have found many ancient whale remains with Megalodon tooth marks. It turned out that the giant shark knew where its prey's vital organs were located and could strike at them. When the prey was immobilized, the Megalodon bared its teeth. An adult person could easily fit into its open jaw at full height. And according to various estimates, the bite force of the Megalodon was almost 11 tons. Now imagine the weight of 3 SUVs concentrated at the tip of a sharp tooth. That's 9 times the power of the largest white shark bite, and 6 times the power of the modern record holder for biting, the saltwater crocodile. Here, look at a map of where the remains of the Megalodon were found. South and North America, Europe, Asia, Australia. It was the master of all seas and was comfortable anywhere on our planet. We've even found some remains of the giant shark in freshwater sediments. Perhaps it wasn't afraid to enter rivers to hunt. Now, other scientists say that maybe the Megalodon wasn't even a predator, all because of its size. It couldn't swim fast. It couldn't even make short dashes like the white shark. If prey tried to escape, the Megalodon didn't rush into pursuit because it could never catch up with it. Another problem is the skeleton of the Megalodon. The cartilage is weaker than the bones, so the musculature of the giant shark was not as massive and robust in the first place. The Megalodon may even have been a scavenger and never got into fights. This is one of the reasons why ancient sharks became extinct. Megalodons like shallow, warm waters, with temperatures ranging from 53 degrees Fahrenheit. But over 3 million years ago, the climate turned colder. This deprived the Megalodons of territories and plenty of food. The primitive whales that had been the main diet of the giant sharks began to disappear. Faster predators took the remnants of food. The Megalodon started to starve. In evolution, a new player entered the field, the toothed whales, ancestors of the modern killer whales. They lived in packs and had bigger brains than the Megalodon. So, over time, they started to compete with the Megalodon. They took advantage of its clumsiness. A group of killer whales could easily win a competition against a giant shark. Many scientists believe this was the reason for the disappearance of the largest shark in the world. But there are theories that the Megalodon is still alive and roaming the dark waters of our planet. Several Australian fishers have allegedly encountered a shark of incredible size, but no one can confirm these testimonies. Fans of this theory believe that giant sharks can hide in deep waters away from human eyes. In the Mariana Trench, for example, it's the deepest place on our planet. It's deeper than if you stuck Mount Everest in the water, and we've even found the teeth of a megalodon there. But science says that such a giant shark couldn't live in the Mariana Trench for many reasons. One, it's too cold. The megalodon was probably a cold-blooded fish, so it had to use the warmth of its environment to survive. But the water in the Mariana Trench is cold, about 40 degrees Fahrenheit. That's because the deeper down, the less sunlight gets in there. The second reason is pressure. Every 30 feet deep increases the pressure by 1 atmosphere. That is, at the depth of 100 feet, the water presses you 3 times harder than you would feel it at the surface. The weak muscles and cartilage of the megalodon wouldn't allow it to dive too deep into the Mariana Trench. And most importantly, food. The farther from the ocean surface, the fewer living organisms. Megalodons used to eat primitive whales, ranging from 10 to 20 feet. Small fish only inhabit the Mariana Trench. A megalodon would never be able to catch one. And, judging by its size, all the megalodon did was eat and then look for food again. Compare its weight to that of a human. The average human should get about 2,000 calories a day with an average weight of about 180 pounds. The megalodon weighed 470 times that and needed many more calories. So, even all the fish inhabiting the Mariana Trench could hardly feed a megalodon for even a few days. So, all these theories, of course, are not true. But still, it's just smart to be careful out there. Know what I mean?
Ooh, great news! Eating ice cream won't make your cold worse. Frozen dairy can help soothe a sore throat and give you the calories you need when you don't feel like cooking or eating anything more substantial. Giraffes sleep for way more longer than 30 minutes a day. Their night and afternoon naps add up to around 4.5 hours a day. You can't have a truly photographic memory, even if you can recall visual material in more detail than others. You'll never compare to a film or camera sensor when it comes to precision. A bigger brain doesn't automatically make you smarter. Elephants and whales have brains way larger than humans. We might not have an impressive brain-to-body mass ratio, but 86 billion neurons help humans stay the smartest species on the planet. Light isn't the fastest thing in the world, it's gossip. No, actually, nothing can compare to it in speed in a vacuum, but it slows down when it's going through water or glass. Particles like electrons, neutrons, or neutrinos win in those conditions. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter isn't tumbling with dangerous rocks constantly colliding. If you ever found yourself there, you'd see how empty and calm it is. The asteroids are so far apart from each other, the chances of collision are super small. A spaceship radar would detect it and help avoid any risks. You don't have to wait for the spring equinox to make an egg stand on its head. It doesn't need equal gravity or anything and can perfectly do it on any day of the year. Oranges aren't always orange. The green skin variety is just as sweet and perfectly ripe. This skin color protects them from the sun and is also a sign that there's plenty of chlorophyll in the fruit. That's why green oranges mostly grow in warmer climates and are sometimes painted orange to look more regular to buyers across the world. More good news. You really always can squeeze in some dessert, no matter how much salad, soup, or meat you've eaten before. You get bored of the savory tastes, but when you see and smell ice cream, cakes, cookies, and chocolate, let me take a minute here. Your brain gets excited and overrides fullness signals for pleasure. Plus, your stomach is a flexible organ, and sugar helps it relax and physically make room for dessert. You have way more than 5 senses. In addition to sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, there is your ability to sense heat and cold, detect vibrations along air or water, tell where some of your body parts are in relation to others, feel pain, thirst, hunger, time, and many other things. When you call someone using your cell phone, the signal doesn't go through a satellite. Your gadget is always looking for wireless radio signal and transmitting data to and from land-based cellular towers. If you want to call someone, the nearest tower connects you to another cell through a huge network of tower-to-tower communications. Brown sugar isn't any healthier than white sugar. It's mostly white sugar with some extra residual sticky syrup in it. This syrup has some vitamins and minerals like potassium and magnesium, but even that doesn't make it diet food. The Eiffel Tower was supposed to be there for just 20 years. The idea of it was to show off France's industrial power during the World's Fair. But because Eiffel added a radio antenna and wireless telegraph transmitter to it, they decided to keep it. It also has a secret apartment on top and used to double as a meteorology lab. It's also a great landmark for a rendezvous. Green and black tea really come from the same bush. The leaves get their different tastes and looks after they've been harvested. Green tea is withered and heated through steaming. Black tea is crushed or curled and then allowed to oxidize and darken. Honey can spoil if you leave it uncovered in a human environment. Keep the lid on and make sure no water gets inside, and it'll be edible for a really long time. Its antibacterial powers won't let any organism settle in there. If you leave wasps alone, no, they won't necessarily do the same. Bees will respect your boundaries if you don't try to hurt them. Yellow jackets are so bad-tempered, they can sting even if you're just walking by their nest without knowing it and are perfectly still. They get water in huge amounts on the way to keep them hydrated. Excess water stays in their bloodstream. Owls can't turn their heads full circle. 270 degrees is as far as they can go without seriously hurting themselves. It's possible thanks to their unique neck bone structure. Bats aren't blind. When it's dark outside, they hunt using echolocation, using echoes bouncing off objects to navigate. There are many kinds of bats, and some of them can see 3 times better than humans. They have receptors that enable these bat species to see ultraviolet light. Fortune cookies aren't originally from China. According to the most popular version of the origin story, they were invented by a Japanese immigrant in San Francisco in the early 1900s. Einstein wasn't bad at math in school. He mastered calculus at age 15 and was always at the top of his class. This myth comes from the story of Einstein failing an entrance exam to a college in Zurich. He did great at the math portion, but failed botany, zoology, and language sections. Elephants are really afraid of mice. Like most mammals, they have brains programmed to jump back when they see a critter. No matter how huge they are, elephants will be startled by little things moving fast by their feet. A mouse can't do them any harm, though. Even if it tried climbing up the trunk, the elephant can easily get it off. The sun isn't yellow. It's a bunch of colors that mix and make it appear white. We see it as yellow or orange because the atmosphere of the Earth scatters colors like blue, green, and violet. This is also why we see the sky as blue and the sun looks warmer at sunrise and sunset. Not all comets have tails. When they're next to a star, they look like small frozen chunks of ice and rock. As they approach a star, the ice is scattered away thanks to the solar wind and looks like a tail. Sometimes these tails are too faint to see. Comets can also get a tail of dust and gas particles. An ostrich doesn't hide its head in the sand when in danger. They are the fastest two-legged animals and can outrun almost any intruder or kick them with their powerful legs. They sometimes bend down to eat some sand for better digestion. They also do it to check their eggs in the ground when they start a family. You can sleep outside after washing your hair and it won't make you sick. Even sleeping outside in sub-zero temperatures at that time can just make you chilly and make your hair freeze. Viruses cause colds, and they don't care about your hair condition. The Earth doesn't get closer to the Sun in the summer. In reality, it's farthest from the Sun in July and closest to it in January. It's warmer in the summer because the axis of our planet is tilted, letting its northern part catch more sunlight for half of the year and the southern part for the other half. So, in summer, the Sun is above the horizon for up to 17 hours a day and just for around 6 hours during winter. You can't see millions of stars even on the clearest night and far from sources of light. The highest number you can see if you have really good eyesight is around 3,000 of them. They are the ones that are close enough and bright enough. Some other luminous objects you can spot are planets, distant galaxies, and artificial satellites. The Moon really doesn't have a dark side. It's tidally locked with Earth, so we always see just one side of it. The Sun, the Moon, and our Earth are all constantly moving. So there are times when the side of the Moon visible to us is lit, and then its other side. It only seems dark to us. No worries, you don't eat 8 spiders every night in your sleep. Most people sleep with their mouths closed, so a spider can't make it inside. Even if you sleep with your mouth wide open, the powerful vibrations you produce while breathing and a warm stream of air coming out of your mouth will scare away any little spider. A penny dropped from the Empire State Building won't damage anyone on the ground. It's lightweight and can't speed up enough to be that devastating. The coin's speed does grow with every passing second during the fall, but the air resistance increases too. The worst it can do to a passerby is sting a little. Mammoths were really still roaming the planet at the time the pyramids in Giza were built. Most mammoths had been wiped out around 10,000 years ago, but a small population of 500 to 1,000 woolly mammoths lived in the Arctic until as recently as 1650 BCE. The Great Pyramid of Giza had existed for 1,000 years by the time the last woolly mammoth disappeared. Your tongue doesn't have bitter, sweet, sour, salty, or umami sections for tasting. Not even udaddy. Each of the 8,000 taste buds that you have on the tongue, the roof of the mouth, and even in the throat can detect all the tastes the same way. You don't have to worry about putting certain foods in certain places in your mouth to get a better taste. Fingerprints aren't 100% unique. Related people can have somewhat similar patterns. Plus, with over 7 billion people on the planet right now, and not all of the fingerprints recorded, we can't be sure anyway. Your brain has more nerve connections than there are stars in the Milky Way galaxy. It's around 200 billion stars versus 100 billion nerve cells multiplied by 40,000 nerve connections. It's impossible to breathe and swallow at the same time. There's a food pipe and a windpipe at the back of your mouth. When you swallow, the air could take the food through the wrong pipe down to your lungs. The consequences would be dramatic. To prevent it from happening, there's a flap guarding the windpipe. When food or drink is going through, breathing is temporarily paused. You can't hum while holding your nose. You're exhaling during humming, and when both your mouth and your nose are closed, the air can't escape. Sushi restaurants don't serve real wasabi. It would be incredibly expensive, so they replace it with dyed horseradish with mustard. The real thing is from the same family of plants. It's served fresh, grated off the stalk, and tastes sweeter. Your chances of getting it are about 0.5%, and if you do, you'll know it from a super high price. Carrots weren't originally orange. Before the 16th to 17th century, almost all of them were purple, with some rare yellow and white exceptions. Orange carrots have been cultivated by Dutch farmers. They believe they'd be easier to grow. It's true that things appear weightless in outer space, but there's gravity everywhere. The further you get from a heavy object, like Earth, the weaker it gets. Still, gravity affects every single spot in the universe that has mass. Strawberries aren't berries. Neither are raspberries or blackberries. Bananas, eggplants, grapes, tomatoes, and oranges are berries. They have 3 distinct fleshy layers, 2 or more seeds, and develop from one flower. You do have enough iron in your body to produce a metal nail that's 3 inches long. Try it sometime. Wait, don't. Lightning can strike the same spot twice, 3 times, or more than 100 times. Even during the same thunderstorm, nothing can stop a lightning bolt from striking the same place it had struck a few seconds earlier or centuries ago. Lightning prefers tall and isolated objects. The Empire State Building, for example, is hit about 25 times a year. The largest living organism isn't the blue whale or the African elephant. It's honey fungus across the Blue Mountains in Oregon. It's as long as 6.5 Burj Khalifas end to end, and that's the world's tallest building. It's still growing, and it's edible. Turkeys can blush, just like humans. The skin on their heads and necks can turn red or blue when they're excited, angry, or sick. The flap of skin over their necks is called a snood and can go bright red from excitement. During mating season, male turkeys' wattles also turn scarlet to show their interest to females. The Sahara isn't the biggest desert in the world. The Antarctic desert is almost twice as large. The second place belongs to the Arctic desert, and the Sahara is third. The main feature of a desert isn't the excessive heat or dunes, it's the lack of precipitation. The ice fields and rocky mountains of the Antarctic almost never get a drop of rain. Sitting too close to a TV won't make you go blind or give you serious vision problems. Hey, tell that to my mother. It can temporarily strain your eyes, but long-term problems are super rare. Reading in the dark won't make you go blind either. Flies live longer than 24 hours. An average housefly lives for around 1 month. Fruit flies have a lifespan of 40 to 50 days. Over this time, one female fly can have up to 500 offspring. That's why leaving flies in a locked room and waiting won't solve your insect problem. Bears don't sleep for months during hibernation. The processes in their bodies slow down and they don't eat or drink, but they can still perfectly react to any unexpected things going on around them, so keep your distance from their dens. Cracking your knuckles isn't bad for your health. The sound you'll hear while doing it is a special organic fluid bursting into the gaps between your bones. It happens under the pressure you put on your joints and is harmless. Goldfish don't forget everything that happens to them after 3 seconds. Experiments have proven they can do pretty well with their tiny brains storing information for several months. They can also hide from their foes and find food. You can't fry an egg on a sidewalk, no matter how high the temperature is outside. An egg needs 158 degrees to cook though, and a sidewalk only gets to a maximum of 145 degrees. Bananas don't grow on trees. They're an herb related to the ginger family and look somewhat like aloe vera or other stem-like succulents. Chameleons don't change their color to blend in with the environment. They do it to show their mood and to communicate. They turn black when they're nervous or upset, and when they're happy, you'll see the bright green or blue. They use lighter colors to attract mates. Toilet flushes don't spin in the opposite direction in the southern hemisphere. The Earth's rotation affects things like the Gulf Stream and hurricanes, but it has no control over toilets. The direction varies from model to model and depends on the water pressure. Mustard seed isn't the smallest in the world. The record holder in this category is the orchid seed from the tropical rainforest. Some of them are so small you won't see them with an unaided eye. They pop out in the air like dust particles and land on rainforest trees to spread further. Carrots are full of vitamin A, but even that isn't enough to help you see in complete darkness. It can only help you maintain healthy eyesight. Everything in the solar system is always in motion. The moon is moving away from the Earth with each year, and our planet gets further and further from the sun. You're also constantly on the move, even when you're standing perfectly still. White chocolate isn't really chocolate. It's made from sugar, milk products, vanilla, cocoa butter, and lecithin, but doesn't have chocolate solids in it. Cocoa butter is derived from cacao beans, which makes white chocolate a cousin of dark and milk chocolate, but not the closest relative or the same thing. Coffee won't stunt your growth. How tall you'll grow is genetic. A healthy diet can contribute to that too. Set your coffee consumption limit at 2 cups a day and you'll be fine. Wow, 2 cups? You don't need to wash chicken before you cook it. Doing it can spread germs onto your hands, work surfaces, clothing, and cooking supplies through splashes. Walnuts aren't really nuts. Neither are almonds, cashews, Brazil nuts, pecans, macadamia nuts, pistachios, or pine nuts. They're all formally seeds of drupes. They can't be called nuts as they aren't fruits that have a single edible seed with an inedible outer shell. Diamonds aren't actually that rare. They're ordinary rocks, and extracting them isn't as complicated as it used to be 150 years ago. Marketing and advertising campaigns and artificially raised prices help them to become something considered luxury. Bulls don't get angry when you show them something red. They are red-green colorblind and can only see yellow, green, blue, and violet colors. Movement is what makes them angry and self-protective. So try to look like a banana. Swimming right after a meal won't give you cramps. Your body needs some extra blood to digest food, but swimming won't revert it from the muscles in your arms and legs, messing up their work. Adding salt to water won't make it boil faster. The temperature of salt water will get higher faster than that of regular water, but the boiling point will also be higher, and salt adds some extra mass to it, so things won't speed up. Kangaroos can't walk backwards. They have muscular legs, big feet, and tails, and can move forward fast but can't go in the opposite direction because of this body construction. They're on the Australian coat of arms along with emus that can't move backward either, symbolizing that the country is always striving forward. Milk won't make your bones indestructible. It does have calcium and vitamin D in it, but no magical bone-healing powers. It is good with cookies. That is not a myth. Hi. Do chameleons only change color for camouflage? No. They can actually change colors to reflect their mood. So, males turn a bright color to show their dominance, and they become darker when they get aggressive. Chameleons also change color to adapt to different temperatures. A cold chameleon will turn dark to absorb more heat, while a smoking hot chameleon will turn itself pale to reflect the sun's rays. By the way,
Do comedians change color for camouflage? Only if their jokes aren't getting any laughs. Okay, I made that up. Now, there's a myth that if you drop a penny from a skyscraper, it'll pretty much destroy whatever's underneath. But when put to the test, researchers found that it just isn't true. On its way down, a coin can't gather enough velocity to cause permanent damage to anything, mostly because of wind resistance and the penny spinning around and stuff. Anyway, just hang on to your change. Now, some people believe that toilet flushes spin in the opposite direction in the southern hemisphere. Some things are affected by the Earth's rotation, like the Gulf Stream or hurricanes, but toilet flushes are way too small. Flushes can spin in either direction, whether they're in the northern or southern hemispheres. Trust me, I know. The biggest determinant of flush direction is the design of the toilet bowl and the water pressure. There's a popular saying that lightning never strikes in the same place twice. Lightning often strikes near the same place a lot more than that. Lightning generally chooses the tallest, pointiest spot as its target. Researchers have found that the Empire State Building gets struck by lightning almost 100 times a year, and quite a few people have been zapped more than once, like a lot more. So, if you're tall and pointy, be careful out there. So there's a common belief that bats are blind. But bats have better vision than humans at night, although humans can see more clearly during the day. Maybe this myth came about because bats rely a lot on their hearing to get about. Or maybe it's because bats see the world in black and white. Now, do goldfish really have short memories? Well, most people put it at 7 seconds. In reality, goldfish can remember things for as long as 7 months. Without a good memory, goldfish who live in nature would never find food. Did anyone ever tell you that a mother bird will reject its offspring if they've been touched by a human? That would be nuts, because most birds don't have a developed sense of smell. They'd never be able to identify the scent of a person. The vulture is an exception to this rule. It has an amazing nose, but then who'd want to touch a vulture anyway? Ostriches bury their heads in the sand when they're scared, except they don't. This myth probably came into being because an ostrich's head is disproportionately small in comparison to its body. So, from a distance, it looks as if the ostrich has its head stuffed in the sand. But if it really did that, it would pass out from not being able to breathe. Another myth is that opossums hang on branches with their tail. The opossum does use its tail to help it climb trees, but its tail can't support its weight. Even a hulked-out calisthenics master opossum could only hang there for a few seconds max. Legend has it that a penguin will fall backward when looking up at an aircraft. Cutest myth ever. Penguins can maintain their balance no matter what, even while looking up at the sky. But low-flying airplanes may cause penguins to flee their nests in panic. Do dogs really sweat by salivating? No, they sweat through their foot pads. But salivating and panting does help them regulate their body temperature. Cat owners may think that a cat only purrs when it's happy. But cats also purr when they're hungry, distressed, or recovering from an injury. Researchers think that purring may be a self-healing trick. Somehow, it keeps their bones and muscles working better. Legend has it that if you run into a skunk, there's only one possible outcome. You're gonna stink for a while. But skunks prefer to flee from danger rather than spraying their magic juice around. That smelly spray's their last line of defense. Before that, they usually stomp their feet and slap their tails to ward off any danger. Did you know there's an alpha wolf in every pack? Except again, there isn't. Unlike captive wolves, wild wolves don't share this kind of social order. They live in family groups like humans, where the parents are the leaders and the little ones gotta do as they're told. There's a myth that owls can turn their heads full circle, but that would cause them significant damage. But still, they can turn their heads comfortably more than halfway around because of their unique neck bone structure. If you've ever poked a turtle's shell thinking it won't hurt the guy inside, you'd be wrong. A turtle's shell is a living and feeling part of its body, with a complete nerve-ending supply.
If the shell gets damaged, it can even endanger the turtle's life. There was a time when people thought that unwashed hair was the ideal habitat for head lice. But head lice don't discriminate. No, they can make themselves a home in all hair types. All they really want is a warm scalp. Most people are familiar with the phrase, "an apple a day keeps the doctor away." Apples are good for you, sure. They're packed with nutrients like fiber and vitamin C. But does anyone really think that's enough? When it comes to food hygiene, the 5-second rule just doesn't make sense. There should be a "where you drop it" rule to replace the 5-second one. Generally, if you drop food on your kitchen floor, it's going to pick up fewer bacteria than if you drop it at the checkout counter of a busy supermarket. Of course, that's assuming your kitchen's clean. Uh-oh. Ever wondered whether the story about chewing gum taking 7 years to digest is true? Nah, it isn't. Chewing gum isn't too different from any other food. It takes around the same time to digest, but it's not exactly nutrient-heavy. Legend has it that catching a cold is likelier to happen in cold weather. But studies have shown that weather doesn't really play a part in getting a cold. A virus does. People may experience more cold-like symptoms when the weather is icy cold, but temperature has nothing to do with recovery time or anything like that. Do people only use 10% of their brains? Well, I have some friends who seem to… never mind. No, the answer is no. Scientists who've studied brain scans say they don't show any large dormant areas of the brain. But if the myth is just about humans having a long way to go to reach their full potential, yeah, that sounds about right. One of life's no-nos is to jump into the pool right after eating. But hitting the gym after a big meal can leave you feeling just as uncomfortable as doing a few laps. Also, if you're worried about getting a cramp in the pool, those can happen anytime, not just after a meal. Does shaved hair grow back darker and thicker? Researchers say it doesn't. But shaving does give your hair a blunt tip, which can make it feel thicker. When it comes to color, that new, darker stubble is just an illusion. Some people are convinced that eating turkey leaves them feeling drowsy. It's true that turkey has a chemical that can cause drowsiness, but so does chicken or beef. Turkey's a favorite for those massive family celebrations, so that drowsiness, it's probably due to the huge amount you ate. The myth that people lose most of their body heat through their heads was probably first invented by a hat salesman. Not surprising. Scientists say that people lose only about 10% of their body heat through their heads. You lose heat through your skin, no matter where that skin is. Have you heard the saying that a full moon can affect your mind somehow? And no, but researchers believe that light from a full moon can affect your sleep, which can affect your mood. Did ancient Vikings really wear those awesome horned helmets? There's no real evidence to back up this claim. This myth probably came from books and music, looking to spice up their heroes a bit. If you want to see a Viking with a helmet, go to a Minnesota Vikings game. That's about as close as you're going to get. Some people believe Einstein flunked math in school. Einstein himself debunked this theory by saying he mastered calculus at age 15. But Einstein did fail to enter the school of his choice because he flunked languages on his first try. Liquid oxygen, which is often on board spaceships, is very quick to burn out in the vacuum of outer space. As for the boom, oxygen plays a crucial role here too. Sound only travels thanks to molecules of air bumping into each other. Since there's no air in space, the whole scene would be pretty much absolutely silent. And that's not a bad thing either. Just imagine how deafening would the sun be if the sound could travel in space. Despite what many sci-fi directors want us to believe, there's no dark side to the moon. Our satellite is tidally locked with Earth, meaning it's always turned to us with one side, while the other always looks away. The sun is much farther from us than the moon, and we're both turning round and round, warming and lighting this side and that in turn. It means that once in every short while, the moon is lit by the sun from either side. It's just that we can't see it from where we are.
While things appear weightless in outer space, there's actual gravity all over the place. It becomes weaker the further you get from a heavy object, like our planet, but it's still there. In fact, there's not a single place in the universe that isn't affected by gravity of this or that cosmic object. Everything that has mass has gravity as well. Yes, even you and me. But space objects are so massive that they tug smaller things towards them. That's why the planets of the solar system orbit around the Sun, and our whole Milky Way galaxy orbits around its own center. Scientists believe there's a supermassive black hole there, about 4 million times heavier than the Sun, which keeps all the stars and systems from flying apart. Our movie hero leaves the orbit of Mars on their trusty spaceship and heads on towards Jupiter. Their face is grim and determined, even though they know what threat awaits them ahead – the asteroid belt. They pitch and yaw, dodging the asteroid flying at enormous speeds toward the spacecraft, but one of them still hits it. No, just a scratch, thankfully. Finally, our hero leaves the danger zone and wipes the sweat from the brow with a shaking hand. Sounds familiar, but couldn't be further from the truth. Asteroids in the belt between Mars and Jupiter are so few and far between that if you ever travel through it, you might not even encounter one the whole way. There are about 1.5 million sizable space rocks flying there, give or take 500,000. But let's not forget, space is a vast place. The distance between two asteroids of any significant size would be millions of miles. So a space chase with two ships weaving between floating rocks would be quite boring in there. Space is often depicted as a black, cold, and desolate place, especially when a movie astronaut leaves the safety of their spaceship. Everything about this description is okay, except for the cold part. It's only true if you find yourself in some really far corner of our galaxy that has no nearby stars. But if you're, for example, in the Earth's orbit and directly facing the Sun, the temperature in the cosmic vacuum could reach a scorching 250 degrees. That's why spacesuits are white. This color reflects light better than any other. Still, the temperature at your back, which isn't exposed to the sun's rays, can be really freezing indeed. Heat doesn't spread equally through space, so if you're not turned towards a heat source, you get very, very cold. Speaking about the sun, it somehow always appears yellow in movies. The fact is, the color we see from Earth is an optical illusion created by our planet's atmosphere, just as the blue sky during the day. The light from the sun spreads in the atmosphere and gets distorted, making colorful spectacles at dawn and dusk. In the vacuum of space, there's nothing to reflect the light, so the sun appears as it really is, white. That ball of glowing gas is that hot. There's a bright flash in the sky, followed by a tail of smoke, and a red-hot space rock crashes into the ground, leaving a huge charred crater after impact. Well, although the smoky tail and the crater are partly true, meteorites don't really have a chance to become that hot while falling. Meteorite is an asteroid that somehow entered the Earth's atmosphere and survived the friction enough to fall on the surface. This happens pretty often, we just don't usually see those rocks because they're normally quite small and fall into uninhabited areas. But even if one falls within a city, the crater would appear because of the sheer speed of the meteorite, not its heat. They do get much hotter because of friction, yet not so much as to burn everything on the ground on impact. As much as we want to believe in instant communication between spaceships and planets, it's not possible, at least not yet. Modern communication systems rely on radio signals that have a pretty slow speed compared to the vast expanses of space. It would take years for such a signal to travel even 1 light year, let alone hundreds and thousands. If you want to send a message to a galaxy far, far away, be prepared to wait a couple of millennia and then a couple more to receive a reply. On that note, space is not as crowded and full of events as is often shown on the silver screen. It's mostly a rather lonely place where planets, stars, and other objects are separated by billions of miles of nothingness. Even if you have a spaceship that can travel at the speed of light, most of the time you'll only see black void full of stars and planets far away. The distances are enormous out there, even between the closest objects. For a better understanding, the Moon, which you can see so well on a clear night, is about 239,000 miles away. It's like traveling around the Earth almost 10 times in a row. Warp drives that can distort space-time and get you to a distant corner of an alien galaxy in the blink of an eye, that's a staple of any space opera. Spaceships capable of such a feat are always shown as instantly accelerating from zero to faster than light. According to the law of physics, people on board should, well, at least be pushed into their seats hard. More strictly speaking, no one would be able to survive such an acceleration because it's too many G's on a fragile human body. Until we find a way to reduce the effects of overload, we can't even start thinking of space warps. Water isn't the rarest and most precious resource in the universe. In fact, there's a humongous space cloud several million light-years away from us that consists entirely of water. Its reserves would be enough to fill all our oceans 140 trillion times over. And many planets, some even in our solar system, seem to have liquid water on them. The most precious resource in space is life, and that requires a lot more stuff to appear than just liquid water. Astronauts are often shown working out on the ISS and sci-fi space stations, and that much is true, they do need physical activity. But the reason isn't that they need strong bodies to work in space. The gravity out there is much weaker, and astronauts don't use their muscles as much as on Earth. So when they come back to the surface, gravity hits them as a sledgehammer, and their bodies feel squishy. To alleviate those effects, they train every day. Although they say we can see millions of stars on a clear starry night, that number is much more modest, about 3,000. All the rest are other objects that are also luminous and mistaken for stars, planets, distant galaxies, and even artificial satellites. They're simply being illuminated by real stars, just like the Moon, and become seen. But because they're that far away, we can't tell if they're stars or not. Still, you gotta admit, it's all still pretty cool. So, if you have some matches and they've gotten wet, don't waste time drying them. The chemical compound can be changed by water and the matches will simply not work. To cure hypothermia, don't get into a hot tub. Fill some bottles with warm water and put them under your armpits. That will help you warm up better than the hot tub for sure. When you're thirsty and don't have much water, don't save it to last you longer. This can lead to further dehydration. Instead, drink every drop of it and try to find more water ASAP. So hydration is a must no matter the weather. But the idea that drinking hot liquids will warm you better is a myth. No amount of hot liquid can raise your body temperature. Plus, you can drink cold water faster than a hot drink, and that will help with hydration. Never poke a beehive because its inhabitants will get defensive, you think? And trying to escape by jumping into a lake or a river won't do any good. Bees will wait for you to resurface and attack you. After you poke the hive, run as fast as you can and don't look back. Sucking the venom out of a snake bite wound is likely to introduce more bacteria into the wound and even poison the person trying to help. Instead, take a photo of the snake, lie down while waiting for help, and try to stay calm. One of the most logical things to do when you're cold is to layer up. Now this is mostly true, but not if you put on cotton clothes. When cotton gets wet, it loses all its beneficial properties and can make you feel much colder. You should always wear wool clothes because they're much better insulators. Never drink cactus water. It can give you a nasty stomachache and even paralyze you. Unless it's a fishhook cactus, but even then, it's too risky. Instead, try eating the fruits from the plant. They're full of juice. When you're chased by some predator, never jump off a cliff into the water. This is much more dangerous than meeting the predator. If you jump from a high place, the water surface will feel as hard as concrete, or the water might be too shallow and you'll hit the bottom. GPS is not the best navigational tool. It's reliable and easy to use, but it can break down. So you should learn how to use a map and a compass. They won't let you down if you know how to use them correctly. A puddle of water might look bad and smell a bit, but water is water, right? Well, unfortunately, boiling it can eliminate the bacteria, but not the heavy metals it contains. Those can cause serious health problems. A better option is to find some stream water to boil. Consuming random berries in the forest is dangerous. First, you need to check if they smell okay. If they have a pear or almond smell, avoid them. Next, get one, rub it on your forearm, and wait for 15 minutes. If your skin starts to itch, don't eat those berries. If you bite on a berry and it has a bitter, tingly, or soapy taste, spit it out. Never suck on stones to get some water. It is believed that when you're doing it, your body produces more saliva and it hydrates you. This is not true. If you don't drink water, nothing will help. Even worse, you can choke on the stone. Eating raw meat and fish is really dangerous. Yeah, we eat sushi, but it's normally saltwater fish, which is mostly safe. In the wilderness, always cook meat and fish before eating it. Moss doesn't only grow on south-facing surfaces, it can grow anywhere, depending on the temperature, so never use it to navigate. You'll be better off using some more reliable sources. For example, keep in mind that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Following birds to find water is a myth. They could be flying anywhere. Land animals like deer are a much better option. They usually know where the source of water is. Many survivalists claim that you should eat whatever animals around you are eating. Bad news, this is entirely false. Birds and squirrels consume berries that are super dangerous for us, but they don't harm them. And some animals eat poisonous plants to become venomous. Now, if a leech attaches to you, never burn it off. This can cause the animal to basically throw up directly inside your skin and cause massive infection. Try using a credit card to break the seal and remove the leech. Or if you're brave enough to wait for an hour, the parasite will fall off once it's fed. No matter how strong you are, punching a shark in the nose will not save you. It's a common belief that they have tons of nerves in the nose, and somehow that makes them vulnerable, but it has been proven wrong. If you find yourself in shark-infested waters, punching the animal in the gills or the eyes is much more effective than hitting the nose. After spending some time in the forest, you realize you're lost, and the first thing you start looking for is food. But you can actually live 6 weeks without food. The first thing you must do is find water and shelter from the elements. Do this and worry about the food later. Don't play possum when you encounter a bear. If it's a black bear, you won't be playing for long. Soon it'll be a reality. You should play possum only if it's a brown bear. Now remember the saying, if it's black, fight back. If it's brown, lay down. If it's white, good night. You shouldn't swim parallel to the shore if you find yourself in a rip current. Instead, try swimming at an angle away from the current and toward the shore. Remember, you shouldn't feel too much resistance while swimming. When you're lost, don't spend all your energy trying to make a fire. Try building a shelter first. This can protect you from the elements, and you'll have a place to rest and sleep after a long, exhausting day of surviving. Bonus tip: always build a bed in your shelter. You'll be warmer when you're off the ground. Now, being stuck in the desert will for sure make you hot. But to avoid getting even hotter, don't take any clothes off. The fabric serves as insulation and keeps you cool, unless it's a thick wool sweater, of course. Most people living in hot climates wear white clothes covering their whole bodies to avoid getting overheated. Eating snow can cause further dehydration. Your body will use more energy to melt the snow and thus more liquid. Take your time and melt the snow first, and then you can drink the water. Also, make sure you're only melting pure white snow. Discoloration means it contains something else besides water, especially if the snow is, yellow. If you stay in the cold for too long, you might get nasty frostbite. If you recognize the symptoms, never rub your hands together. It can damage your skin even more. The best thing to do is to seek immediate medical care. So, you see a cave, and the first thing you do is start a fire. I mean, cave people did that all the time, so it must be okay, right? Wrong. The buildup of smoke can be very harmful. Instead, try covering yourself with some plant leaves to warm up. Getting stung by a jellyfish hurts a lot, and taking a leak on a jellyfish sting will not help you. It'll make the situation much worse. Wash the area with salt water and ask for medical assistance. It'll save you from an uncomfortable situation. Trust me on this.
You've probably seen at least one epic quicksand movie scene in your life. Watching a person gradually sink in the sand might cause tangible anxiety and even give you asthma sensations. Movies taught us to believe that falling into quicksand without any help around is fatal, and struggles only help to bring the sad ending closer. This myth may cause problems in real-life situations, so let's debunk it. When researchers studied quicksand, they revealed that it tends to thicken with time, but it still remains very sensitive to movements, even small ones. At higher stresses, quicksand can liquefy in a blink of an eye, but thankfully, a person who tries to swim out of the quicksand will never manage to drown completely. Humans just aren't dense enough. Quicksand is basically water mixed with fine sand and clay, and the density of the human body is twice lower. So, unless you're a superhero made of an unknown massive metal, there's no reason for panic. Remember that you would probably descend about up to your waist without going any further. Although you might feel the tension in your chest, the quicksand will allow you to float away. It might be harder to get out once the sand sediment begins to form. In this case, the quicksand's viscosity will increase and require solid amounts of force. So, let's say you've just stepped into quicksand. How to get out? First of all, if you're wearing a backpack or something heavy, drop what you're carrying immediately. If possible, get rid of your shoes too. It usually takes a minute for the mud to liquefy, so you can try to take a couple of quick steps back. But if you feel that you're stuck, avoid taking large steps. Movie characters usually begin to yell and their friends tug on them with all their might, but in fact, it's not so safe for your body. Just wriggle your legs around to create a space between the body and the quicksand. This way, water can flow down to loosen the sand. It's important to do it slowly and gently. And if you happen to sink up to your hips or higher, bend backward. This way, it will be harder to sink. Keep on floating on your back and gently pull your legs out of the trap. Once your legs are free, you can use your arms to smoothly propel yourself backwards as if you were swimming. When you find yourself at the edge of the quicksand, carefully roll to hard ground. Also, it will be good to carry a stick when you walk in risky areas. It's helpful when you need to detect upcoming quicksand, and if you're already stuck, you can put it horizontally behind your back. It will create a bridge on which you can lean while crawling out. By the way, an object with a higher density would still float on a quicksand. Aluminum, for example, is almost 1.5 times more dense than quicksand. When researchers placed an aluminum ball on top of a container with specially created quicksand, the ball remained on the surface. When they began shaking the container gently, the ball stayed floating on top. But when they shook it a bit harder, the ball sank to the bottom. So, if, say, you dropped a pack of cash on quicksand and you want it back, pull it very carefully using long tongs. And avoid touching the mud itself. Phew! Finally got out of the sandy trap, but here crawls a creepy snake and another movie myth. Green anacondas are one of the largest snakes in the world, and females are usually much larger than males. But the very anaconda from a series of movies measures 40 feet. That's too long even for this extraordinary creature. In real life, the biggest anaconda ever found was 33 feet long and weighed about 880 pounds. Meanwhile, the average length for an adult female anaconda varies between 15 and 16 feet. Anacondas prefer living in swamps and slow-moving streams, mostly in the tropical rainforests of the Amazon and the Orinoco basins. The green anaconda belongs to snakes called constrictors. These snakes are not venomous. Instead, they wrap their bodies around their prey and give it a final hug. Let's say you refused to hug Anaconda and continued walking, and suddenly you get bitten by a venomous snake. Everyone knows you should just brace yourself, suck the venom out of the bite, and continue the journey as if it never happened, right? Wrong. This old-school method might seem very epic, but today it's known to cause more harm than good. A venomous snake bite is basically a poorly made injection. The venom doesn't just stay in a bubble under the skin, it gets into the lymphatic system, and it can hardly be removed by suction. But if you manage to do so, you still risk poisoning yourself. Although, technically, swallowing venom is relatively safe, it's still a bad idea. If you have any open sores or cuts in any place from the mouth to the stomach, the venom can still enter the bloodstream and cause damage. Walking is also a bad idea. It's recommended to stay as still as possible to slow down the venom traveling through your lymphatic system. Don't wash the bite. Doctors may use this area to quickly identify the type of snake that bit you, and don't try to change clothing. Any unnecessary movement may cause the venom to move into the bloodstream more rapidly. You arrived at the hospital just in time and the doctors helped you. But unfortunately, your arch enemy is waiting around the corner. He sprinkles a couple of chloroform drops on his handkerchief, puts it on your nose, and nothing happens because we're not in a movie. Chloroform is presented as a common tool to instantly knock someone out in almost every movie where it appears. But in reality, this substance doesn't work so quickly. Even at higher doses, it takes at least 5 minutes for chloroform to start working. And several drops, as it usually appears on the screen, are not considered a high dose. Real doctors widely used chloroform as an anesthetic in the previous century, but it had many unwanted side effects. So later, its usage declined after the development of safer and faster inhalation anesthetics. You run away from the enemy and find yourself trapped in a storage room. There are no windows, but you find a ventilation hatch door. You're not claustrophobic. You can easily escape through a ventilation shaft, right? Nope. Time to debunk another movie myth. Ventilation shafts can be really narrow and dangerous. If you manage to get inside, you'll have to deal with some filters, a fan, and other obstacles. Also, metal edges on the inside can be pretty sharp, which doesn't make the journey safer. And besides, most ventilation shafts are not designed to carry the weight of a human, so it might just fall apart under your body. No big deal. The enemy captures you and takes you on a plane. No time to explain. Let's go skydiving. You're about to shout "Hasta la vista, baby" to your enemy. But unlike in some of the movies, in real life, you cannot talk while you're in freefall. It's impossible to be able to talk whilst 120-mile-per-hour winds are all up in your face. That's why skydivers communicate through hand signals and facial expressions. You land and find yourself in medieval London. But wait a minute, why are all these people so tidy? Thanks to movies, many people imagine those that lived in the Middle Ages as being very dirty and smelling even worse. The myth claims that only rich people bathe and did it only a couple of times a year. But in fact, it's not the case. Unpleasant body odor was associated with sin. So people were expected to do their best to stay fresh, no matter how rich they were. Rich people could afford to immerse themselves in tubs of heated water, while the lower class washed with wet clothes. Also, public saunas and baths were quite common in the Middle Ages, and they were really popular among the common folk too. People went there for the sake of hygiene and socializing, just like in the era of ancient Roman baths. The city of Bath in England was one of the popular destinations. Crowds came from all parts of the country to tidy up and enjoy its famous natural hot springs. Once upon a time, in the deep blue sea, there was a giant monster called the Kraken. People believed it lived in the waters near Norway and Greenland. The first time anyone wrote about the Kraken was a long, long time ago. It was a man named Erik Pontoppidan from Denmark in a book called The Natural History of Norway. He wrote that the Kraken looked like a huge octopus or cuttlefish, and it could pull ships down to the bottom of the ocean. Later on, people started to imagine the Kraken as a giant squid. Even today, the story of the Kraken is still very popular, and it can be found in books, movies, or games. The stories surrounding the Kraken might sound like nothing more than local folklore or myths, but in 2004, the first giant squid was photographed. This amazing discovery was made by a team of Japanese scientists who had been working for years to capture a live giant squid on camera. They used a baited line with a camera attached to it to lure the giant squid to the surface. They also used a special lure that mimicked the light patterns of a small creature to attract the giant squid. After several days of waiting, the team finally got lucky. The image showed the giant creature's long tentacles and large eyes, as well as its distinctive body shape. It didn't stop there, though. In 2012, another team of scientists, this time from National Geographic, filmed a live giant squid for the first time in its natural habitat. This footage gave the world a much better understanding of the giant squid and its behavior. You've surely heard about this next myth too. It was said to be the most beautiful and wealthy city to ever exist. Its entrance was decorated with marble statues. The architecture of this city was sturdy and imposing. The depictions of Greek deities, beautifully painted, could be seen almost everywhere. The city has been the subject of debate for historians and fiction writers alike. We still have very little information on the location of the ancient city of Atlantis. That is, if it even existed. Since it was supposedly swallowed by the sea in its entirety, it's no wonder some curious minds linked it to other mysterious locations on Earth, even to the Bermuda Triangle. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's not yet confirmed that Atlantis truly existed. The idea of an island sinking into the sea due to an unknown disaster is a widespread idea in mythology and popular culture. However, it is possible that the story of Atlantis was inspired by actual events, such as the sinking of islands like Helike. On this island, located in the Gulf of Corinth, there was a thriving ancient Greek city. It was known for its prosperity and wealth, and it was also an important spiritual headquarters for the Greeks. The city was home to a building dedicated to the immortal Poseidon, and it was believed that he protected the city himself. However, one fateful night in 373 BCE, a massive earthquake struck the region. The ground shook violently, and the city was swallowed up by the sea in a matter of minutes. The residents of Helike, unable to escape the disaster, all disappeared under the waves. The sinking of Helike was a great tragedy for the ancient Greeks, and it was seen as a punishment from the higher spirits. Many believed that the city's prosperity and pride had angered them, and they had punished the city by destroying it. The city remained underwater for centuries, and it was not until the 20th century that it was rediscovered by modern archaeologists. Today, the most part of the city is still underwater. While we're on the subject of Greek myths, we have to talk about the famous city of Troy. This was a legendary city in ancient Greece. Scientists believed for years that it had been made up by writers and philosophers. According to an ancient Greek legend, the city was founded by the Trojan prince Paris, who stole Helen, the wife of King Menelaus of Sparta, and brought her back to Troy. This event sparked a huge conflict between the Greeks and the Trojans that lasted for 10 years. One of the most famous stories from the Trojan conflict is the tale of the Trojan horse, a large wooden horse that the Greeks built and left outside the city gates as a gift to the Trojans. The Trojans, believing the horse to be a symbol of peace, brought it into the city. But inside the horse, there were Greek fighters who, once inside the city, opened the gates and let the rest of the Greeks in. The Trojans had no escape this time, and they were ultimately defeated. The city was rediscovered in the 19th century in modern-day Turkey. It's located near the Scamander River. Today, this region is an archaeological site and draws a lot of tourists each year. The following myth is indeed sad, but it might have some truth to it too. It is said that years ago, the Solomon Islands in the Pacific Ocean, there lived a man that was deeply in love with his wife. The woman, however, decided to leave him for another man and moved to the nearby island of Tiaonamanu. Heartbroken and filled with rage, the man sought out a curse to take his revenge. He set out on a journey in a canoe, determined to bring destruction to the island where his wife had fled. Upon arriving at Tiaonamanu, The man planted 2 taro plants. One he kept for himself. According to the instructions, once his own plant began to sprout, disaster was supposed to strike the island. And it did. The man watched from a mountaintop as a series of waves smashed into the island, causing it to sink beneath the waves. Tionamanu was a real place, but it's not entirely clear when it disappeared. It is said that waves alone could not have washed away this small but tall volcanic island. But an undersea earthquake could have probably done it. The island was balanced on the edge of an unstable underwater slope. The most reasonable explanation is that a huge earthquake shook the region, which made the weak foundation collapse and caused the island to sink beneath the waves. This island-sized landslide would have pushed a lot of water out of the way, which would have created a series of massive mega tsunamis. So, although those vengeful waves could have occurred, they were most likely the result of another event. And that sad man, with his curse fulfilled, returned to the Solomon Islands with his heart still heavy after the loss of his wife. We won't leave the ocean waves just yet, but we're heading over to Hawaii. A legend has it that once upon a time, there was a Hawaiian higher spirit named Pele. She was the protector of volcanic fire and was said to have arrived at the islands to flee from her older sister. To conceal herself, Pele hid in various hideaways on each of the islands until she finally concealed herself in a pit at Kilauea. This is why, according to the legend, Kilauea is known as Hawaii's active volcanic center today. The story may be visually stunning, but in reality, volcanism is caused by the superheated mantle that triggers a lot of melting beneath the surface of our planet. People also say that Pele's tears and hair can be found scattered around the volcano. However, reality has more to do with physics than with folklore. When lava cools rapidly, particularly when it gets quenched in water or a small amount of it flies through the air, it turns into volcanic glass. When it stretches and cools down, it can sometimes form tear-shaped droplets, or it can get stretched so thin that it begins to look like strands of hair. We know today that Hawaii is a volcanic region known for its fire mountains, with huge streams of lava shooting up from active vents. It's no wonder it became an ideal origin place for the story of 2 sisters and their sibling rivalry.
Today we're going to an art history trip. Our main focus is to unravel the mystery of whether or not ancient statues has always been white. We'll visit museums and even time travel to try and get a glimpse of what these statues were really like back in the day. To kick off our tour, we land in New York. We climb the famous steps of the Met, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and walk inside this enormous museum. You walk down the aisle and get to the room where one of the world's biggest collections of ancient Greek and Roman statues is held. Admiring the large array of statues, one thing seems evident. They are mainly white. It makes sense since their primary material is white marble. For centuries, historians, archaeologists, and researchers in general have always taken this fact for granted. Weren't these statues always white? Until recent decades, this wasn't something that people discussed. But in the 1980s, researchers unearthed an ancient Greek statue that was clearly pigmented. This new discovery made them wonder, were all ancient statues painted? Let's take a close look at this work of art. This 3rd century before the Common Era Greek statue was discovered to be almost entirely painted, still in its original form. You don't have to look too hard to notice that the statue still carries some of these original pink colors, with some shades of blue and red paint as well. The thing is, this statue is not an exception, it's the norm. As it turns out, ancient civilizations did paint their sculptures with bright and vivid colors, but somewhere along our historic timeline, this information got lost. According to researchers, pigment in sculptures was a way of bringing their representations closer to real life. We live in bright colors, so art might as well reflect that, right? Right! So let's take a few steps back to understand what happened. So why are our museum's galleries filled with white statues as far as the eye could see? You might have heard of Michelangelo. It's a famous Italian sculptor who carved the iconic David and painted the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Michelangelo was one of the most emblematic painters of the Renaissance. The Renaissance was a historical period when European artists, philosophers, and scientists developed a renewed interest in the creations of ancient Greece and Rome. Artists like Michelangelo studied a series of Roman sculptures, like this one, the Laocoon and his sons. They fell in love with their lifelike figures and pristine white marble. The one thing they didn't know, and didn't have the technology to know, was if the colored pigments from those sculptures had faded. After all, they were found after years of being buried or left in the open air. It's speculated that this statue, the Laocoon, had colored snakes and mantles, for example. When the Renaissance artists set out to pay homage to ancient artists, they left their masterpieces bare too. They carved directly onto the marble and left them white, without pigmentation. Probably because that's the way they thought things were done in the old days. The works of Michelangelo and his peers influenced a whole generation of sculptors after that. So this way of doing art traveled to modern times without much questioning. However, evidence of color pigments in ancient statues is abundant. Some researchers show that scholars have known for at least a century that ancient sculptures weren't originally all white. Other studies suggest that this discovery might have happened even earlier. In early 1980s, archaeologist Vincent Brinkmann made a huge discovery. During his time as a student at the Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich, he developed a technology that was able to detect polychromy in ancient samples of Greek statues. Polychromy is an art of painting in several colors. Anyways, he was taken aback by his discovery and confused as to why and how other researchers and archaeologists weren't talking about this. As it happens, the first discovery that ancient statues weren't all that white happened a long time ago, way before Vincent was born. It happened during the unearthing of Pompeii back in the 1700s. As you may know, the city of Pompeii in southern Italy was completely covered with lava after the sudden eruption of Mount Vesuvius. The city was destroyed, but the clouds of ashes that arose from the lava managed to preserve a lot of the city's structure through time. Thankfully for art historians and archaeologists, Pompeii became a digging ground for understanding ancient Rome. Researchers found several conserved frescoes that depicted scenes of daily Roman life. In one of these paintings, an artist is seen painting a sculpture. This fact was recorded by a very famous art historian known as Johann Joachim Winckelmann. He is also considered the father of art history. Now let's take a closer look at another famous statue. To see this one in person, you'll have to fly all the way to Rome and visit the Vatican museums. The statue you're looking at is a classic representation of Caesar Augustus. In case you didn't know, he was the founder of the Roman Empire and the first emperor of Rome. He is important. The sculpture you're seeing is called the Augustus of Prima Porta. You may have seen this before, probably in a history textbook. The thing is, it's always depicted in its white marble form. But according to an archaeological finding from the 1860s, the original statue was way much more colorful than that. According to archaeologists, the statue of Augustus de Prima Porta has a crimson tunic, yellow armor, and a purple mantle. It's important to keep in mind that colors weren't made artificially as they are today. Artists could only produce color from natural resources, so purple, for example, was an extremely difficult color to make. Back in the day, they derived purple from the mucus of a rare species of snail, meaning that anyone who used the color purple to pigment their art and clothes was powerful and wealthy. Well, this looked like enough proof for me that ancient statues weren't always white. but as we can judge by the look of our modern museums, there didn't seem to exist enough interest in the art community to further explore polychromy on the ancient statues. But remember that archaeologist we talked about, Brinkman? Well, he has been collecting data on polychromy since the 1980s. At a certain point, he even began making colored replicas of such statues. The technology used is far from simple. To reconstitute these ancient works of art, Brinkman makes a 3D plaster copy of them. Then he paints them by hand with the help of his wife. To find out which color were used in the original sculptures, Brinkman uses UV light. Certain pigments glow under UV light, exposing traces that would otherwise be invisible. Take this colorful archer as an example. Look at these colors. This piece is the reconstruction of a marble archer in the costume of a horseman. To accurately depict the archer, restorers had to research a lot about the history of the region where the art piece was originally found, since colors have a cultural meaning. That, together with UV technology, allowed for the reconstruction you can now see. It seems very far from the idea we have of what the Greeks would make, but this is supposed to look exactly like the original one. According to Brinkman, we shouldn't be so surprised that ancient Western civilizations used bright colors to depict their realities. After all, the Romans and Greeks were heavily inspired by the works of art of Egyptian civilization, Old Mesopotamia, and Asia. For example, if you look at the famous Egyptian Sphinx, you might be led to believe that it always looked that way, but that wasn't at all the case. Modern studies and virtual reconstructions of the monument show us that the monument was very colorful. The body of the statue is believed to have been painted terracotta, while the regal headdress that circles the head is meant to have been golden blue. All of these were considered important colors in Egyptian times, and it was only suitable to use them to depict a pharaoh.
They look like they come from your worst nightmares. There's no evidence they exist, but all the scary stories about them still sometimes sound so real, passed down from generation to generation. Which one is your favorite? The first creature that probably comes to your mind is Bigfoot, a giant creature that reminds you of an ape and allegedly leaves extremely large footprints and other traces that make people in the area of the Pacific Northwest wonder if it's really there. It's so popular, other similar beasts got their own legends too. Like the Mogollon monster, something people also call the Arizona Bigfoot. Reported along the Mogollon Rim, this mysterious creature is 7 feet tall and has big red eyes. Stories say its body is covered with long reddish-brown or black hair, besides its face, chest, feet, and hands. It mimics coyotes, birds, and other wildlife, emitting strange whistle sounds at the same time. The creature tends to explore campsites when it gets dark. It builds nests out of twigs, pine needles, and leaves. And if you're in that area and someone is throwing stones from locations you can't see, yep, Mogollon monster. This creature is omnivorous, which means it eats both plants and animals. And it prefers to wander at night, lurking for innocent prey lost in the woods. Urauli, a 10-foot mythical creature people say hides in the southwestern woodland parts of Alaska. It's a hulking giant beast known for its extremely long limbs. Legends say their lanky arms are so long they reach their ankles. The creature is covered in a thick coat of hair. The only thing you can see on its face, not covered in the hair, is the creature's eerily luminescent eyes. The legend says Urauli use their glowing eyes to hypnotize their prey. But not us, since stories say they prefer to catch deer. And they're known to be kind towards humans. And some claim the Urauli are actually just a type of Bigfoot. Wendigo. This terrifying creature is said to be hiding across the northern forests of Canada and the United States, always looking if there's some lost wanderer. The story says the Wendigo used to be a lost hunter. The freezing winters transformed him into a fierce 15-foot-tall beast with desiccated skin tightly pulled over its large, pointy bones. Stories about this creature showed up in the 20th century, and people say the beast still roams around the forest in long, cold winters, constantly looking for lost people he could grab from the darkness. Lake Worth Monster. This scary creature that's part man, part goat is also called the Island Monster. This 7-foot-tall monster is so strong it could hurl car tires like they were just plastic toys. In a worst nightmare scenario, it could appear in the darkness, sailing from the treetops and fiercely landing with full force on the hood of passing cars. That's how the first people who reported its existence described it. Lake Worth is located west of Dallas and east of Fort Worth. There's a landmass in the middle of this mystical lake known as Greer Island. The legend says that's where this scary monster, also known as Fort Worth's answer to Bigfoot, roams. And that's where some skeptics and thrill seekers still go, wandering around and trying to discover if the legend is true. Lurking in the darkness with its scary red eyes, meet the Mothman, a humanoid beast reportedly seen in the 1960s in Point Pleasant in West Virginia. On one cold night in November of 1966, two young couples reported to the police that they saw a big gray creature with glowing red eyes. It looked like a flying man with wings around 10 feet wide. During the next couple of days, more and more people said they saw the same thing. Later, a wildlife biologist from West Virginia University told reporters that these descriptions fit the sandhill crane. It's a big American crane almost as tall as a human being. It has a 7-foot wingspan and circles of red around its eyes. The gigantic bird may have got out of its migration route and started these stories. Or did it really? Fresno night crawlers. They're not that tall, considering they're monsters, about 5 feet. The upper part of their body is pretty small, so most of their height is their legs. These creatures have allegedly made 2 appearances so far. Once, people saw them in Fresno, California. In contrast, the other time was in Yosemite National Park in California. Both times they were in videos of poor quality, so it wasn't easy to find details of their upper body. But the creature is considered thin and white with no arms. At least, we can't see them. It also has pretty short and stilt-like feet. Have you heard of the slide rock bolter? It's said to be hiding somewhere in the mountains of Colorado. To be precise, in Lizard Head Mountain, only a stone's throw southwest from Telluride. It's some sort of leviathan that lives on the land. This mountain whale carefully observes its surroundings with beady eyes while chilling atop Lizard Head. It hangs from the peak while its split, clawed tail faces its body downward. If anything steps into its territory, the beast lifts its malign fluke immediately and bolts down the mountainside. With its jaw full of razor-sharp teeth wide open, it gobbles whatever or whoever is in front of it, including miners, lost tourists, and loggers. It sweeps through trees and destroys all natural life that's been in its path for more than 100 years. Or at least that's what the legend says. Wow, that's the scariest one for me so far. Altamaha. Somewhere in southeastern Georgia, close to the mouth of the Altamaha River, there's a hissing sea monster hiding. It's one of the biggest rivers in Georgia that empties into the Atlantic Ocean, and the entire area that surrounds the river is full of small islands, canals, dikes, ponds, acres of marshes, and old rice fields. Perfect for such a monster to hide, don't you think? The story says this unusual cryptid has a sturgeon-like body, including a bony ridge on its top. Due to its front flippers, the creature swims like a dolphin. His snout reminds me of a crocodile. His teeth are large and sharp, whereas his eyes are big and protruding. The beast is green or gray with a white yellowish underbelly and is up to 30 feet long. There's no physical evidence the Altamaha really lives there, but the legends date back centuries when people started talking about an enormous snake-like beast that hissed and bellowed. Loch Ness Monster. or how many like to call it, Nessie. This myth dates back from old times, all the way to a group of people that lived in ancient Scotland known as the Picts. The legend started to grow in the 1930s. Back then, a road near Loch Ness was finished, offering a nice view of the lake without bigger obstacles. And in April of 1933, a couple noticed there was a large animal. They compared it to a prehistoric monster or dragon. Most people imagine it as a plesiosaur, which is basically a marine dinosaur. The beast quickly crossed the couple's car's path and then disappeared below the water's surface. Later that year, some researchers even found big footprints. They believed they were from a pretty soft-footed solid creature around 20 feet long. Later, some determined the tracks were the same as the ones that a hippopotamus leaves. Plus, scientists said the lake wasn't that nutrient-rich for such a large predator. There are not enough animals to support such a beast at the top of the food chain. But the legend about a giant mythological creature has moved on and still makes people across the world wonder if there's really something hiding deep down in the dark, murky waters of Loch Ness. Your dog doesn't actually have a stronger sense of smell than you do. People often talk about how dogs have a superior sense of smell, and this probably started when a researcher from the 19th century, Paul Broca, marked humans as non-smellers. No one ever provided sensory testing to support this theory, but people still believed in it for a long time. The truth is, different types of animals can identify different kinds of scents. There was an experiment done where human volunteers needed to track a scent. Researchers dipped twine in chocolate essence and then zigzagged it all across a grassy field. Volunteers weren't allowed to use other senses. For example, they were ear-muffed and blindfolded. They even wore thick gloves and knee pads. The conclusion they came to is that while we are not as effective as dogs, we can follow a scent trail and become way better if we practice. Interestingly, humans are more sensitive to certain smells compared to dogs, like fruit or flowers. This is because the evolution of dogs didn't require them to sharpen their sense of smell for these types of odors. A TV screen won't ruin your eyesight. At least, there's no evidence that looking at a TV screen can really hurt your eyes. It's the same for phone or computer screens. Looking at them may lead to eye strain or fatigue, but in most cases, it's nothing you can't ease with proper rest. That doesn't mean watching TV or staring at your phone for too long doesn't have negative consequences in other parts of your life, like reduced concentration and lack of socialization, among many other things. Being able to roll your tongue is not really a genetic trait, even though biology teachers often say this gift is based on a dominant gene. There was a study that showed 7 out of 33 twins who didn't actually share this feature. Identical twins share the same genes, which implies that they should share this trait too. But they don't, which means genes are most likely not the factor that decides if you'll be able to roll your tongue. And this myth still exists, even though it was debunked over 6 decades ago. You're going to catch a cold if you go outside with wet hair is yet another myth. To actually catch a cold, we need to have a virus inside of our body. Also, wet hair is not something that makes you more attractive to the various germs lurking around you. People mostly believe this is true because they A. heard it from their parents, and B. associate going outside with your hair being wet with getting sick because you're generally more exposed to germs when you're outside. There are no truly double-jointed people. Some individuals have certain parts of their bodies that are very flexible, so they can, for example, touch their chin with their elbow or bend their fingers backward. We often call these people double-jointed, like the secret is in them having an extra hinge somewhere. Well, it's not true. They have single joints, but they may have bones with oddly shaped ends, or their connective tissue may be very pliable. It seems the appendix, as in the organ, is useful after all, despite its poor reputation as a useless intestinal tube that pretty much goes nowhere. It seems the appendix is actually a reservoir for bacteria, but a good and helpful one. It stores microbes that assist our body when it's fighting certain problems and illnesses. in the early stage of our life, the appendix also helped us with the process of forming white blood cells, together with certain types of antibodies. Hey, do you know where the stomach is? Sounds easy, right? But it's probably not where you think. Most people believe it lurks somewhere in the area behind the belly button. In reality, it's a bit higher in the abdomen, sitting on top of the rest of the gut. Here's how you can find it. Look for the point where your lower ribs meet in the middle. Now go down approximately 3 finger widths, and then 3 to your left. Now you're supposed to be right over the center of your stomach. You don't have taste sections on your tongue. The tongue map probably showed up at the beginning of the 20th century because scientists found minute differences in how strong a taste had to be in different areas inside the human mouth to actually register. This study created a myth that each part of the tongue was responsible for different tastes. In reality, all types of taste buds are spread across all areas of your mouth, and they can detect each taste. This includes umami too, which is now accepted along with the usual 4: sweet, salty, bitter, and sour. We don't only use 10% of our brain. We use way more, even when we're sleeping. Scientists tested this statement, and one of the methods they used was measuring activity in the brain while a person was performing various tasks. Results have shown we use most of our brain most of the time. The exact percentage varies from person to person, depending on what they're doing. Plus, it's not possible to monitor every single one of our brain cells. There are billions of them after all, so you can't know the exact number of active ones at any given time. When asleep, your frontal cortex, the part responsible for, let's say, higher level thinking, and certain areas that help you sense your surroundings are still working. Humans don't just have 5 senses: hearing, taste, touch, sight, and smell. This idea originated from Aristotle, a famous Greek philosopher, who said that there was a sense organ for every sense: eyes for seeing, a tongue for tasting, and so on. But that was thousands of years ago, and he was missing the vestibular system, a key sense organ. The vestibular system is the apparatus of the inner ear that our body uses to stay in balance. Not every sense requires its own sense organ, just a different type of sensory receptor. For example, your skin alone has 4 different receptors for temperature, touch, pain, and proprioception. Proprioception is body awareness, which means that even if you move your arm behind your back, you still know it's there. Something an octopus, for example, doesn't know. So, saying we have 33 senses could be closer to the truth, not 5. These include senses of balance, temperature, thirst, and many more we need to survive. If you like cracking your knuckles from time to time, no need to worry. The whole idea that it increases risks for potential knuckle problems perhaps makes sense in the first place because that's what happens when you constantly put pressure on your joints over the years. The satisfying sound you hear happens because of bubbles bursting in the fluid that actually lubricates your joints, called synovial fluid. If you eat a big meal, you can still go swimming. You won't get cramps. The idea behind this misconception is eating a heavy meal will increase the amount of blood flow to your stomach. That way, blood won't go to your muscles, which will potentially cause cramps if you go swimming. The truth is, you probably won't feel that comfortable swimming immediately after eating a large meal, but you're safe to go if you really want to. It's even recommended to have a small snack that's rich in carbs not long before your swimming session. This will boost your energy. When you shave your body hair, you don't have to worry about it growing back darker and thicker, because this is a myth. You may believe there are some changes in the color, thickness, or growth rate of the hair. That's because after you shave, you give the follicle a blunt tip, which may look or feel darker and rougher than it was before. But that's just a perception trick. You'll see that once your hair grows in again, it will be the same as before. It's a myth that we lose a disproportionate amount of body heat through our heads. You may feel like that because our head, chest, and face are definitely more sensitive when it comes to changes in temperature. In reality, you'd be just as cold if you went out without a hat as if you weren't wearing pants. You probably feel like you're losing heat through your head because it's often one of those parts that we leave uncovered when going out. No need to worry if you wake up a sleepwalker. You're not going to seriously harm them by doing so. If you startle one, they can be quite disoriented and may have a confused reaction. Sometimes it's better to do that than to let a sleepwalker get up and start doing certain things that they shouldn't be doing while sleeping, like cooking or driving. Or you could just show them the way back to bed.
So, what kind of gas do you fill up with? Well, tacos usually do the trick for me, but at the filling station, you've probably noticed different tabs with some numbers on gas pump buttons. Those are octane levels, varying from regular and mid-grade to premium. Each one provides a different level of octane that your specific engine type requires to function effectively. Your choice should be based on the compression ratio of your engine. So, the myth of using premium for a car that requires regular gas to gain better performance or to boost the engine's health is false. Best stick to the fuel recommended for your car. You'll save money buying the correct fuel. But what if you filled your gas tank on a cold morning, allowing the fuel to shrink? Won't it make the fuel denser, providing more value for your dollar? Well, this is another false myth. The supply tanks are buried so deep underground that the temperature inside doesn't change at all. We've all heard that the toilet bowl flushes in the opposite direction in different hemispheres, clockwise in the north and counterclockwise in the south. In theory, the Coriolis effect should indeed make the water move in those directions. But in reality, the departing water is only influenced by how it's flushed, and the direction of the flow doesn't depend on the place. Now, you're caught in a thunderstorm and there's no shelter around you. Lightning strikes suddenly, and your first thought is to run towards where it just struck. After all, lightning never strikes the same place twice, right? Wrong. The lightning did hit that spot for some reason. This might be a sign that it's a risky place. Such a spot could be easily struck again. Best find some shelter and stay away from metal objects. Eating before swimming has always been considered dangerous. People believed it caused cramps. But this isn't actually true. The only negative effect of swimming after having a meal is shortness of breath. So just make sure you keep to the shallows as your food goes down. The Great Wall of China is often claimed to be visible from space. But there's actually no building on Earth that can be visible from such a distance. You can see lights on Earth during the night, though. Albert Einstein, the greatest physicist of all time, was often mentioned for his poor math skills. People said he'd failed this subject at school. But even though Einstein did fail an irrelevant entrance exam, he was actually really good at math, even creating his own original proof of the Pythagorean theorem at the age of 12. Such a late bloomer, huh? Spring is in the air. Unfortunately, this isn't the best time for baby birds. They tend to fall out of their nests. Sometimes they end up in a dangerous place and should be taken somewhere safer. But you've probably been told that if someone touches them, their mother will no longer take an interest in raising its young. In reality, birds have a very poor sense of smell and can't tell if a human has made contact. So feel free to place them back into their nest if needed. Given our brains are so large, it's a shame we only use 10% of their capacity. Well, that's another myth. You actually use your brain to the fullest, but different parts of it work at different times during the day. Now, there was a time when warming up your car in cold weather was a necessity, and some people believe it's still true. But today, we use different cars, and it's worse for your vehicle to be left idling for too long. As for warming it up, 30 seconds is all the waiting you need. There's an old saying that relates to bats' poor eyesight, but this couldn't be more untrue. Not only do they use echolocation, which is extraordinary, but they can also see pretty well. In fact, they see better than us humans during dusk and dawn. Watching TV or staring at your computer doesn't give you square eyes or harm them in any way. Your eyes simply become strained and tired after a while, but as long as you blink enough not to let them dry out, they'll be fine. Baldness is a natural occurrence in men. Shampoos, gels, sunlight, hats, and levels of testosterone have all been blamed for the early loss of hair. But natural hair loss is purely hereditary. It can come from both sides of the family, but mainly from the father's genes. We've all swallowed our chewing gum, whether by accident or there wasn't a table to stick it under. Well, don't worry. It won't reappear 7 years from now. Your stomach will easily digest it and pass it straight on through. Purchasing makeup in bulk is a great way to save money, as makeup supposedly never expires. But it does. It can also grow bacteria, which will negatively affect your skin. So make sure to renew your supply every 12 months. Another myth about makeup is that it's harmful to the skin. But in reality, it's completely fine and can help protect your skin from pollution. Just don't forget to remove it daily. Vikings have always been admired and popular in cultures around the world. They've been pictured as brave warriors, wearing helmets with horns in them. But the truth is, they never had horns. This image was first portrayed in an opera composed by Wagner in the 19th century. And since then, the horns have been associated with Vikings. You might have been told not to wear red around bulls. But in reality, it doesn't matter what you wear, as these animals can't see color. They're usually provoked by general movement. Dogs, on the other hand, can see colors. But how they do it is different to humans. The ostrich will lay its head and neck along the ground if it sees an enemy coming. As the bird's colors match the ground, it easily blends into its surroundings. At the same time, ostriches often look as if their heads are stuck in the ground. But they are not. Ostriches wouldn't be able to breathe if that was really what they were doing. The Scottish Highlands are synonymous with beautiful landscapes, kilts, and the soothing sounds of the bagpipe. But the bagpipe isn't originally Scottish. This instrument was first used in the Middle East centuries before anyone in Europe had the opportunity to annoy their neighbors by playing this unusual instrument. Now, during deep sleep, you breathe heavily and can accidentally pull into your mouth all kinds of things. That's why you swallow 7 spiders on average per year. Or so they say. But this is not possible. A spider can find nothing less appealing than a growling, fleshy pile of human that offers no food. It simply won't get near your mouth. Your fingernails don't grow at the same rate. The more the hand or finger is used, the more it promotes the growth of the nail. That's why the nails on your dominant hand grow faster than on the other. Ninjas just didn't have one color of their famous ninja uniform. Of course, black was the best to blend in at night, but they also had quite a wardrobe that contained many colors to blend in on other occasions. Shaving your hair won't make it thicker, change its color, or make it coarser. It just appears that way, since new hairs start growing back with blunt tips at the ends. The memories of goldfish last way longer than 3 seconds. These creatures can remember things for up to 3 months. You can also teach your goldfish to feed in the same place every day, amongst other tricks. Chameleons' full color of dull brown and green already blends in with their surroundings. These animals don't need their ability to change color to hide. Their amazing skills are instead used for communication and temperature control. During an earthquake, you're advised to find a doorway that is the safest place in the building. In reality, it's not safer than any other part of your house. Instead, seek shelter under a table or desk until the shaking stops. Opossums have been shown to hang upside down in many cartoons. And indeed, their tails are strong enough to allow them to hang this way for a short while. But their bodies are too large to be hanging from a branch for more than a quick picture. Now, we're all aware of the saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. But although puppies learn more easily, grown-up dogs can also learn tricks with ease. A trick you should avoid, though, is the one that involves your pooch licking your face. Dog saliva has slightly more alkaline pH, which can prevent bacteria from breeding. But there can be hundreds of bacteria living in a dog's mouth, which may be harmful to your skin. Nah, my dog can kiss me all she wants. Napoleon was one of the most successful emperors in human history. But in modern times, he's sometimes mocked for his short stature. However, at 5 foot 6 inches, he was above the average height for that time. Napoleon even once played point guard for the French national basketball team. Nah, I made that up. Hi, do chameleons only change color for camouflage? No. They can actually change colors to reflect their mood. So, males turn a bright color to show their dominance, and they become darker when they get aggressive. Chameleons also change color to adapt to different temperatures.
A cold chameleon will turn dark to absorb more heat, while a smoking hot chameleon will turn itself pale to reflect the sun's rays. By the way, do comedians change color for camouflage? Only if their jokes aren't getting any laughs. Okay, I made that up. Now, there's a myth that if you drop a penny from a skyscraper, it'll pretty much destroy whatever's underneath. But when put to the test, researchers found that it just isn't true. On its way down, a coin can't gather enough velocity to cause permanent damage to anything, mostly because of wind resistance and the penny spinning around and stuff. Anyway, just hang on to your change. Now, some people believe that toilet flushes spin in the opposite direction in the southern hemisphere. Some things are affected by the Earth's rotation, like the Gulf Stream or hurricanes. But toilet flushes are way too small. Flushes can spin in either direction, whether they're in the northern or southern hemispheres. Trust me, I know. The biggest determinant of flush direction is the design of the toilet bowl and the water pressure. There's a popular saying that lightning never strikes in the same place twice. Lightning often strikes near the same place a lot more than that. Lightning generally chooses the tallest, pointiest spot as its target. Researchers have found that the Empire State Building gets struck by lightning almost 100 times a year, and quite a few people have been zapped more than once, like a lot more. So, if you're tall and pointy, be careful out there. So there's a common belief that bats are blind, but bats have better vision than humans at night, although humans can see more clearly during the day. Maybe this myth came about because bats rely a lot on their hearing to get about, or maybe it's because bats see the world in black and white. Now, do goldfish really have short memories? Well, most people put it at 7 seconds. In reality, goldfish can remember things for as long as 7 months. Without a good memory, goldfish who live in nature would never find food. Did anyone ever tell you that a mother bird will reject its offspring if they've been touched by a human? That would be nuts, because most birds don't have a developed sense of smell. They'd never be able to identify the scent of a person. The vulture is an exception to this rule. It has an amazing nose, but then who'd want to touch a vulture anyway? Ostriches bury their heads in the sand when they're scared, except they don't. This myth probably came into being because an ostrich's head is disproportionately small in comparison to its body. So, from a distance, it looks as if the ostrich has its head stuffed in the sand. But if it really did that, it would pass out from not being able to breathe. Another myth is that opossums hang on branches with their tail. The opossum does use its tail to help it climb trees, but its tail can't support its weight. Even a hulked-out calisthenics master opossum could only hang there for a few seconds max. Legend has it that a penguin will fall backward when looking up at an aircraft. Cutest myth ever. Penguins can maintain their balance no matter what, even while looking up at the sky. But low-flying airplanes may cause penguins to flee their nests in panic. Do dogs really sweat by salivating? No, they sweat through their foot pads. But salivating and panting does help them regulate their body temperature. Cat owners may think that a cat only purrs when it's happy, but cats also purr when they're hungry, distressed, or recovering from an injury. Researchers think that purring may be a self-healing trick. Somehow, it keeps their bones and muscles working better. Legend has it that if you run into a skunk, there's only one possible outcome. You're gonna stink for a while. But skunks prefer to flee from danger rather than spraying their magic juice around. That smelly spray's their last line of defense. Before that, they usually stomp their feet and slap their tails to ward off any danger. Did you know there's an alpha wolf in every pack? Except again, there isn't. Unlike captive wolves, wild wolves don't share this kind of social order. They live in family groups, like humans, where the parents are the leaders and the little ones gotta do as they're told. There's a myth that owls can turn their heads full circle, but that would cause them significant damage. But still, they can turn their heads comfortably more than halfway around, because of their unique neck bone structure. If you've ever poked a turtle's shell thinking it won't hurt the guy inside, you'd be wrong. A turtle's shell is a living and feeling part of its body, with a complete nerve-ending supply. If the shell gets damaged, it can even endanger the turtle's life. There was a time when people thought that unwashed hair was the ideal habitat for head lice. But head lice don't discriminate. No, they can make themselves a home in all hair types. All they really want is a warm scalp. Most people are familiar with the phrase, "an apple a day keeps the doctor away." Apples are good for you, sure. They're packed with nutrients like fiber and vitamin C. But does anyone really think that's enough? When it comes to food hygiene, the 5-second rule just doesn't make sense. There should be a "where you drop it" rule to replace the 5-second one. Generally, if you drop food on your kitchen floor, it's going to pick up fewer bacteria than if you drop it at the checkout counter of a busy supermarket. Of course, that's assuming your kitchen's clean. Uh-oh. Ever wondered whether the story about chewing gum taking 7 years to digest is true? Nah, it isn't. Chewing gum isn't too different from any other food. It takes around the same time to digest, but it's not exactly nutrient-heavy. Legend has it that catching a cold is likelier to happen in cold weather. But studies have shown that weather doesn't really play a part in getting a cold. A virus does. People may experience more cold-like symptoms when the weather is icy cold, but temperature has nothing to do with recovery time or anything like that. Do people only use 10% of their brains? Well, I have some friends who seem to… never mind. No, the answer is no. Scientists who've studied brain scans say they don't show any large dormant areas of the brain. But if the myth is just about humans having a long way to go to reach their full potential, yeah, that sounds about right. One of life's no-nos is to jump into the pool right after eating. But hitting the gym after a big meal can leave you feeling just as uncomfortable as doing a few laps. Also, if you're worried about getting a cramp in the pool, those can happen anytime, not just after a meal. Does shaved hair grow back darker and thicker? Researchers say it doesn't. But shaving does give your hair a blunt tip, which can make it feel thicker. When it comes to color, that new, darker stubble is just an illusion. Some people are convinced that eating turkey leaves them feeling drowsy. It's true that turkey has a chemical that can cause drowsiness, but so does chicken or beef. Turkey's a favorite for those massive family celebrations, so that drowsiness, it's probably due to the huge amount you ate. The myth that people lose most of their body heat through their heads was probably first invented by a hat salesman. Not surprising. Scientists say that people lose only about 10% of their body heat through their heads. You lose heat through your skin, no matter where that skin is. Have you heard the saying that a full moon can affect your mind somehow? And no. But researchers believe that light from a full moon can affect your sleep, which can affect your mood. Did ancient Vikings really wear those awesome horned helmets? There's no real evidence to back up this claim. This myth probably came from books and music, looking to spice up their heroes a bit. If you want to see a Viking with a helmet, go to a Minnesota Vikings game. That's about as close as you're going to get. Some people believe Einstein flunked math in school. Einstein himself debunked this theory by saying he mastered calculus at age 15. But Einstein did fail to enter the school of his choice because he flunked languages